workshop to order. Susan, you can just note who's here. We don't really need a roll call thing, but we're here for a half hour to talk about wireless communication. And what I want to do is take a minute or two and at least explain the background, where we got to, how we got to where we are today. So historically, in 2007, the village installed well, we didn't install it, the carriers installed a 6-unit distributed antenna system throughout the village. And if you look at the map on the wall, the green dots are the antennas for the system that's been operating since 2007. In late 2021, we got a lot of feedback, including a Change.org survey that Dan Rosenberg put together, and decided, hey, it's time to look at what we have and how do we improve wireless communications in town. So we formed a village council subcommittee. It was me, Dave Goldberg, Mark, and Pete Halleck, and our charge was to figure out what do we want to do with wireless communications. In June of 2022, we hired a company called Gunnarsson Consulting, something like that, out of Seattle, and they conducted what we call a drive-through, where they drove every street in the village with their instruments and measured the signals of all three of the wireless carriers. And I'll show you one of the results here in a little bit on the board here. Hey, Michael. So we met again with Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile on different occasions. The result of the Verizon conversations was that they were anxious to build a cell tower right behind the police station, and we said we weren't excited about that, and left it at that. They have done nothing else other than said that's what they want to do. AT&T, we've met several times with them. They admit they have some issues. They've done a lot of internal work, and they're in the process of obtaining internal approvals to improve their wireless service in Franklin. I don't have any more specifics than that. We met with them probably 2-3 months ago, and they will probably be back to us, I would say, another 3 or 4 months. It's a fairly long process for them. T-Mobile, in about 6 months ago, I guess, they came in with a final plan with what they wanted to do, and they're in the process of moving forward with that. If you look at the pink dots on the map, they're proposing 8 different antennas that affect Franklin. There's more than, I think there's like 15 in their whole plan right now surrounding Franklin, but these were the only ones that will impact us. So one on 14 Mile, kind of Wing Lake. We don't have the exact location. 3 along Inkster Road between 13 and 14. One on 13, somewhere around Woodside, and another on
Around Cheviot Hills.
13 near kind of Cheviot Hills, plus or minus. Again, we don't have the exact location. They have formally come in
And then you
with,
forgot there's one that's like at the end of
I'm sorry,
Irving Road.
yeah, kind of along Wellington there.
That's Irving Road. That's that Irving Road cutoff is
Yep.
what I think that is.
Yep.
The cut through.
And if you look closely at the map, you can see they're picking high altitude places. So, again, we just received an application for the 13-mile Woodside location. Our authority is very limited on what we can do. The Federal Communication System controls all this stuff, not the state, the Federal Communication. We can control somewhat the location of the whatever facility that they are proposing to put in. That's about it. We've had very good cooperation with T-Mobile. They've worked with us. They recognize that they're,
Come up
this
here.
is Pete Halleck just came in.
Come up
He's
here.
he's another part of our wireless team here, so.
Yeah, you can-
Yep, have a seat there, Pete, yeah. So, that's where we are. Peter Goethe was supposed to be here. He has the exact application from them that we can get in. And there's a couple more seats up here, if you guys want to squeeze in.
There's a couple seats.
Yeah, right at the very front.
So that's a very quick oversight of the plan, what they're going to do.
Bill?
Yeah,
Let's talk a bit about, how this came to light in the first place. I think we've had a lot of anecdotal evidence for a long time, people complaining about cell phone service. It's through the regular village council meeting. Every meeting, we have time for residents to have an open forum. One resident came in really complaining about their situation. They're on this cul-de-sac. Their children must go to the end of the cul-de-sac. The school buses can't come in. Out of cell phone communication with their children. Really laid out some cases why it was a problem every single day, no resolution. So that's our opening up. What does it matter to the village when we have poor cell phone communication? When we have power outages, when we have 911 issues, what happens when you have no cell phone coverage? This one resident came in, he was very expressive about how it's affecting him every day for his children, affecting him every day for his business. He works from home. Said, we should address that. That's what prompted the first of the cell phone subcommittee. So that was excellent. Having residents come forward at 7 o'clock on the village council meeting, expressing whatever they need to express for 2 or 3 minutes. So that was great. Bill mentioned about the Gunnarsson survey. So rather than just go from emotions or anecdotal evidence about who's doing well, who's not doing well, for actually a very low cost, I think it was $6,000, something like that, $8,000. This consultant drove every street of the village with devices measuring the signal strength for each of the carriers. And on the maps that they returned back,
can you put the map up on the,
it was really obvious where there are problems. It was really obvious. Now, the dots represent, the red dots represent very weak coverage.
14 mile across the top, the red line, 13 mile in the center, the mostly green line, and then Southfield way down.
So you can see the maps. Now, the red dots indicate poor coverage. They were taking readings approximately every 50, 100 feet, as often as it's triggered. What you will not notice, which is more subtle, is that there are lots of streets with 0 dots.
Yeah.
0 dots because there was no signal at all. So that really starts telling us that, T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, we certainly have areas of trouble. So great. Now we have something solid to talk about where we have good coverage and bad coverage with actual numeric data. And that led to further conversations. Fine, we should do something. This is 2020, at the time 2022. We've had, most of the devices in the village are older, 3G type level communication. So what options are there from a technical point of view to make things better? So that's some context. When you see this one map, there's other maps like it, but really highlighting there are whole areas of the village, whole streets with 0 dot. And you may be looking where your house is in your particular service, and you'll find either a red dot there or no dot at all. That's that indication there. Thank you, Bill.
Can I just say?
Let's get the map, if the map is oriented differently than I said.
Yeah.
North is on the right,
The map's upside.
and so you got to turn it a quarter of a turn.
So before we
North is on the right.
click that 3 times, one more,
There we go.
nope, one more.
No?
There.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. 14 now is at the
Yes,
top.
correct. That's-
Franklin
yeah.
Road is mostly green. Okay, and then,
So as you take this map, and there's a couple other maps for different carriers for signal strength, and then you put in, whatever towers happens to be nearby, you see a pretty strong correlation. There's, clearly why we have no service there. You know, whole regions of the village have lots of red dots. Some regions are well supported, some regions are not supported. Look at historic district. There's almost no dots in historic district at all. If you live there, you may have that same experience.
Can I interject one thing? First of all, is this being recorded right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. I don't understand why we have such a huge turnout for this tonight. And that had we expected this, we should have moved this meeting into the church. This isn't fair to all the people that are lined up out there. I don't know where all this came from, and I'm curious because someone indicated that there was a flyer distributed throughout the community in certain places. Does anybody know where that flyer emanated? It did not come from the village of Franklin. Does anybody know where that flyer? Say it again? So some parts of the village received a flyer. Does anybody have any idea?
That's right, Mike, so.
I'm sorry?
That's right, I was part of the group that put out the flyer.
Okay, well, Kathy, you shouldn't do that.
Well, I
You should, if you're gonna do
Hang on,
something
real
like
quick,
that.
real quick.
No, just a minute, Dave, just a
Mike,
minute.
I'm just saying,
This isn't fair to the people that are.
totally agree. I'm just saying, can we actually potentially, if you disagree, that's fine. Move that discussion to our meeting this evening so that we
Well,
can allocate the 30 minutes
I
to
feel
this
bad that
topic.
there are people, and I wasn't
No, I
expecting.
appreciate that, and I think that's reasonable. I
let's
just
move
think
on.
that I would like to, we're allotted a very small amount of time to talk
I'm
about this,
sorry?
the 30 minutes.
I think we can reschedule this and give people more than 2 days' notice, because that's when the flyer came out.
I don't disagree with that.
I agree with you.
This is a very urgent matter for the village.
Sure.
People are interested in it.
Sure.
And I think it would behoove the council to schedule a time, more than a half hour, that would give everyone a chance to understand clearly what's happening.
I agree, because I think what this does-
A chance to put together some information.
This was not supposed to be this.
Which we have seen so far, Michael, I'd like to finish.
Yeah.
You put together a subcommittee, we have never seen any data from the subcommittee. We have never seen any minutes from the subcommittee. We don't know, except for how it's going on record now, and maybe a couple of other meetings, who's on the subcommittee. I think it would behoove us.
I
to
agree with
schedule a
you.
meeting that would include the entire council.
Sure.
To give an opportunity for the residents to, one, understand what has been done so far in detail, the minutes of the various meetings that have already taken place, the history of the development of this entire situation, and give people an opportunity to speak.
That's my
When you
whole
only
point.
limit it to a half an hour, that's really not giving all of the interested parties a chance to participate.
That's what I'm saying. We're on the same page here.
Exactly.
I am not happy seeing this kind of a response to something the council wasn't prepared for. We aren't in a venue to accommodate
Right.
this amount of interest, and I agree, it deserves a special meeting,
Right.
and we should reserve the church to do it.
And we will
And
do
no
that.
one should take it upon themselves to put out a flyer that isn't discussed with the rest of the council,
And-
because this is the result.
Yeah, Mike, just to reiterate, hang on, hang on, Bill,
One at a time.
Bill,
To talk.
Bill, one second.
Utilize the 15 minutes.
Right.
You
That's
guys can talk about a flyer amongst yourselves. We're here and we're concerned.
Right.
Yes.
Let's utilize the time that we
Yeah,
have.
let's-
So,
Let's go.
real quick, what I do want to say is, again, to level set the conversation, because there's clearly plenty of passionate people here, and I do want to give them their time, because again, it's not as easy as just rescheduling. People have carved out this time, and so I want to give the full 30 minutes to be respectful to the people and the time that they've given up by being here. And so I do think that we need to have a separate forum for this where we can have a much more time allotted. I don't think we should have an event on the back end of it so that we're not held to a specific amount of time to put pressure on people to not fully vet out the communication. But I think what would be very productive for us moving into that conversation is to hear from you all about what your concerns are so we can come to that conversation prepared.
And David, you had some comments?
No, I'm just was not aware of what the concern is of the residents at this meeting. Is it because of their lack of understanding of what's gone on in the cellular process, or this more immediate
Why don't
issue
you let the
that?
rest
Let's
of them
let
talk?
them tell
Yeah,
us.
yeah, let's-
I understand that,
okay.
but
Common
that's the point is, that
So
wasn't the
so
purpose
shall
of
we
the
let them come and
the
speak?
meeting today, so yeah, we'll be more than happy to have a few people come up and give us an idea of what the concern is.
Go
If
ahead,
there's
let's,
somebody that is a lead spokesperson for a group of you, that would be helpful.
So,
necessarily.
what, you know,
But I think I was the first person in this resident, when I moved here 11 years ago, I came to this council, y'all were, there were, and said, this is unacceptable. I have moved here from Beverly Hills to over there, and I moved to a place where I have to run my business on a cell phone, and I can't.
right,
All right? And I raised the question, Bill knows it, everyone knows, I came in here for 4 straight months saying, what are you going to do? To be honest with you, here we are 10 years later, and you're surprised that there's a turnout like this? That's shocking.
No, we're not surprised at all.
All you gotta do is look at that map.
You're misunderstanding what I said.
okay, so let's
So
let
is the
somebody else speak.
concern
So
the
let's,
cell
so
service
it's
is
a
bad or the
combination
health
of things.
risk?
This is,
Why are we here?
let's let some of your
I'm
folks speak.
Verizon, just to let
Stand
you know, I'm on Verizon, I don't know what anyone else is.
Okay,
AT&T told me I couldn't get service here.
Okay,
And I changed from AT&T to Verizon to be able to do it because AT&T said they couldn't get service here.
so let's allocate some time here for the public to come up and speak.
Couple
So
people.
what I want to do is I got to limit comments to a couple minutes because there's so many of you, but come on up to the microphone and give us your name and your comments, please.
I've actually spoken here before on the same subject, but I'm Cindy Scanrup. I live on Wing Lake,
Yep.
south of 14, down the street from Mark. I don't know everybody here and why they're here, but I can speak for some of us, and maybe more will pitch in and agree. But I think we're here not because we're concerned about the self-service issue and not saying we shouldn't fix it, but it's the way in which we fix this is what's important and what's crucial to our community and our health and our safety. To me, I think there are hundreds of communities around the world setting their own regulations regarding how these towers should be put up. We have a lot more control and voice and power as a community when we come together than we think. They are setting new restrictions, new setbacks on how far these poles can be from houses and residential areas and schools. We need to be pioneers in this, in solving this problem, and setting our own regulations to keep our community safe. I know a lot of solving the problem, like we're all talking safety, right? I think we're all agreed that like everybody wants safety for a different reason, whether that's improved cell service for safety, how we install and improve the cell service for safety. In 21, the Supreme Court ruled against the FCC for not providing enough information that their regulations, which were set 30 years ago, are safe. There is actually no possible way that science could keep up with technology and do any sort of long-term study to support this. They haven't come back yet with updated regulations, so it's on our hands. And I think a lot of the community here is just really concerned on that matter. I know that there's a lot of.
Okay.
Cindy, you
Yeah,
got 2
that's
minutes.
it. All right, that's fine.
I just
Great.
wanted,
Yeah.
one quick point.
Let's-
A lot
let's
of things that you have mentioned, we've talked about, we just need to tell you what we've
Yeah.
done. So I
I
appreciate
would
your
just like
comments.
to say, could I just have a raise of hands as people who are concerned about the safety issues regarding the cell towers?
Okay, great, we agree.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think
Who
most
else
of us
has
are
it?
with you.
A
Okay,
quick
other
comment.
comments?
Quick comments. Carrie?
Let's come on up to the,
Hi, everyone. I just want to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Carrie Lazada. I'm a Franklin resident. I live down the street from Mark Hankey, and I'm also the Director of Cable and Community Relations for Bloomfield Township, where a young lady works for me over there who's managing live streaming the meeting. These meetings are live streamed. I do want to just mention that we have terrible self-service at my house, but I do want to mention that any elderly resident or an older resident that is interested in the police responding to a 911 call, it is recommended by my chief, Chief James Gallagher, that you have a landline in your home, because the only way that when you call 911 that you get a call to they know exactly where you are is by having that landline. And so I'm not for or against. Well, I can't speak to that. I'm just sharing the chief's recommendation that you might want to consider not getting rid of your landline if you want to be able to have
That's gonna
police
change.
response.
You understand that's going to change.
Yes, I'm just making the recommendation as of today, because when I learned that, when he said that, I was not aware of that. I had never really thought about it, so I just wanted to share that.
Because what I
Yeah.
had heard is that if there's any service in the area, say if you have T-Mobile and you don't have cell service, but Verizon has service, if you call 911, it will go to the nearest tower and it will connect with the nearest tower. So as long as there is some cell service.
Yes, but it doesn't tell the police where your home is.
Right.
So even if you're in an apartment complex or a condominium, it's the same thing, that it would tell you, if you're calling from a cell phone, it would maybe take you to the complex, but it will not take you to the unit in the complex.
Good.
And so for safety reasons, this is just
Good sug-
another consideration related to cell phones that I wanted
Any
to.
cell phone? With any cell
Carrie,
phone.
we're
you're
at 2 minutes here, so we got to.
You're saying any cell phone, though I'm asking
Who
that.
else?
They'll ping
Okay.
to a tower and then they can trace the
Any
tower.
cell.
Yeah, but it's gonna go to the tower, not to.
Hi there, I'm Pat Phillips. I live on Woodside Drive, and happy to be here, and thank you for hearing us. One thing about the 911 calls, I've actually made 911 calls on my T-Mobile cell phone, and what it does, it directs you to your location of your phone, so it's actually pretty darn accurate. So if you're a person and you're in trouble and you're calling 911, that 911 call knows where you are. It doesn't matter, it really can route you directly to where you need to go. As far as addressing your in-home business, totally get that. There are ways that you can build an intranet in your own house using your router. And
I have done that.
okay, so there's lots of effective ways to manage your intranet service at home. Okay, so that is something like I've been a technology consultant. I've worked in mobile bidding. I've set up Wi-Fi intranets all over the country. So I am happy to help anyone that has any issue in your house. I can take care of that for you. It's really not a hard thing to do. And there's different capabilities as far as the amount of data you want to push and kind of data utilization, that kind of thing. As far as the cellular communication thing goes and the cable board, as you're talking about, there are options out there that enable us as a community to have our own municipality almost as it concerns Wi-Fi, internet providers, that kind of thing. There are ways that we can do things that are not necessarily tied to T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. Because as you can imagine, we're already seeing on Xfinity advertisement for 10G. The Wi-Fi thing is going to continue to grow. And the way you think of Wi-Fi, think of higher amplitude, short distance carries more data. So as you move from 3G to 4G to 5G, you're talking about waves that went from this, that carried data to a larger distance but less data, to more data, shorter distance, right? To now, lots of data, very short distance, 5G. So Wi-Fi is kind of falling all over itself, and there are
Okay,
better
we're out of time.
options.
So you wanna wrap
And
up?
I would like to present those to you guys.
Good, very good.
Oh, cool.
Next, right here in front.
So I totally understand about
Can
the
you-
Wi-Fi.
what's your name and-
My name is Cindy.
Your name and where you
Cindy Ludwig. We live on Garden Way, and we don't have good internet service because it goes out, and we have zero cell phone service. So when my internet goes out, and I have a business side of my house, and my husband works out of the house too, we can't use our cell phones. I have an elderly father that I need to keep track of. So if my internet's not working, if you look at the big picture, cell phone services don't go down. There was once in the last 30 years that AT&T went down. Internet service goes out all the time because of the nature of Franklin and the tree situation. There's no way around trying to make sure that you have constant internet service, and our service has gone out many, many times, 5, 6, 7 times a year. So if you're worried about safety, and I understand the nature of the internet, I think it's great. And that's what we use, and we have boosters all over our house. But there are times when there are emergencies that's concerning me as I get older. It's concerning taking care of my dad, who's in his 90s. And I really think that if they're giving away cell phones to poor people and for free, we're in Franklin. Why can't we have cell service?
Cindy,
That's
what
all I have to say.
internet do you have?
I have AT&T. And when I walk around my block, I get cut out of my service, and then there's Verizon. So everyone in that circle of Apple Tree and Colony Hill, nobody can get service walking around their own
And I think if you look
neighborhood.
at the map we put up earlier, that's the plan.
The area.
Help you out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Oh, I know.
Susan, can you go back? Susan?
Thank you, Cindy.
Go back to the other map.
Why are there 4 on Easter?
Right, they're foreign.
That's
And
Because
Irving.
this is Verizon, I'm sorry, this is T-Mobile's plan. Again, we have very limited ability to,
Not very little, we have.
no, we can
make
move it-
recommendations
We
to
can
them
move it
and suggest-
Well, so
75
the whole
feet.
Yeah, we have the law,
But
legally, we
the
can move it
point
75
is that
feet.
if we make regulations, if we just make decisions as our council, that we want to have a restriction where you can have a cell tower, it must be a minimum, it can't be any closer than, say, 200 feet from a home,
Kathy,
for example.
take a pin on that map, find a spot on that map where there's not a house within 200 feet.
So what I'm saying is, I think we need to, though, that's is what I think we need to talk about.
Work
We-
together.
We need to talk about, so one of the things you can do is you can make the tower much higher. Being much higher will take it further away from the
And that's exactly the way we're
home.
going, Kathy. So there's a whole lot of information that we haven't told you about, and I'm sorry that it's out there, it's, we
What do
just
we have at
gotta,
6:30? Wait a minute,
Mine will be quick, I promise.
hold on, just one second. Okay. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Danielle Clayton, 26345 Normandy. I have AT&T. I've noticed after the ice storm that we had in March, my AT&T service kind of went poop in certain areas as I drive around. I call AT&T and I complained to AT&T and they said, if more people call, they will fix and update their towers. So people, I was talking to some people back there, they said they don't actually call their service, they're coming here and complaining. I think the more people that actually call and spend the half an hour on the phone with their provider, they'll actually update the towers if more of us keep calling. The other thing, I have AT&T, but I have fiber, so I don't have issues, hardline fiber in my house. So I don't have the interruption, so if you guys look into AT&T fiber, you might actually get better service at your home.
Where do you live?
Normandy.
Okay.
But as I drive through, there's certain areas that I'll be on the phone only after this ice storm. In March that we had, I dropped my calls in certain areas where I actually panic because I'm driving and I go, I just lost my phone, what happened? And I never used to
Just
have
since
that.
but
Just
before
since
the
this-
ice storm?
No
it was-
problem. Not a problem with AT&T.
Danielle, we got
Be able to
to,
pin-
the community got to AT&T, because we initially talked to them and they said, go jump in the lake. A couple months ago, they came in and said, wait a minute, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And they are working on getting a plan together, so.
And I think the point you're making is a really good one, because it's not like we just make a request and they come and put facilities in the village. They have to be motivated to do it, and phone calls are a good way to do it.
Best way.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, thank you. We got time for a couple more here? Everybody's spoken that wants to speak? I assure you, go ahead.
Paula Slough, Woodside Drive. I want everybody to have she can't be without cellular service. We want you to have, of course, service. I want everyone to be happy, but I'm concerned about the health ramifications.
Absolutely.
And I just want discussion, that's all. I want to hear what's going on. So if we could at least have something where you let everybody know that, number one, the information that you have, provide us with something, and then give us a time where we can all meet. Because
Will do.
obviously, there are a lot of people that are concerned, not only about not having the service, but also about the safety.
Right.
And we just want a balance.
Absolutely.
Because you can't have people in a city like Franklin, this fabulous city, where they can't run a business. I run my business out of my house. I'm not having a problem, but they are. So I get that, but I'm worried about the health ramifications. And of course, I'm sure everybody's concerned about that too, and they need a balance. So please, give us a chance
And I
to hear
think,
everything.
yeah, That
That's
is an
all.
issue we absolutely have addressed, and the carriers will tell you.
But we don't,
So, yeah, it's.
But-
it's
but
just like
no,
the little
we-
flyer thing.
We owe an explanation to you, no
Yeah,
question.
it's just like the flyer thing.
If you
Well,
say
if
that
they
to the
wouldn't have given
carriers,
us, yes,
If we mention, in any time we've ever met with the carrier, and we mention health risk to them, they literally sit back in their seat,
oh, I'm sure.
roll their eyes back in their
course.
head, and
Of
tell us
course,
it's.
that's why we have to be the,
Understood.
I get it.
So for us to expect that we, as a village council, will be able to convince that attitude.
No,
That it's.
and I get that.
Yeah,
It's
so-
just that we are powerful as a group.
Understood.
And we have power, we have to do something about it. We have to speak up and we have to say, you know what? That's fine. We understand that you have to have this here in order to give us service. But how can we
So
mitigate
these new
this?
small cells that they're putting in, compared to the green ones, which are the little cones that are no higher than the height of a traditional telephone pole,
Mm-hmm.
go on telephone poles, but they go on poles that are,
50 feet.
yeah,
They'll be lots higher.
25 or 30 feet taller. So they're higher in the air. The only next step after that is a cell tower in the center of Franklin. And we know what that discussion has led to historically. So there's only several types of systems available. The
Yes.
small cells, well, the cones, the small cells, and cell towers.
DAS and small cell.
Right, so,
And I
think
understand.
T-Mobile has been totally open with us. They don't have to do any of this stuff. You know, we've said we want them higher. We want them at minimum of 150 feet from a building. And they're okay with that. And the 13-mile application we just got a week or so ago, and Peter's looking at it, but I'm sure they're gonna work with us and put that node in the right spot that is safe, and it does the most in terms of improving phone service.
Well, I respectfully ask that you could let us
Exactly. And
be a part of this.
our
And I
fault for
remember
that,
when
right.
I was here last month and Kathy handed out some kind of, I don't know what it was, but I heard you say that you were handing out some information on medical. Well, you know, we want to hear about that.
Right.
And it's just not good enough not to have a balance here.
Bill?
And I understand you're trying, but I think we need more, we want to be involved.
And we will.
Thank you very
make
much.
a bigger effort to do that.
Thank you
Thank
for speaking up. We clearly have a lot of interested folks here, a lot of interested residents, all sorts of sides of the issue. Bill, we've run past the half-hour schedule. This HDC is waiting to meet with us now. I would recommend a separate forum, a larger space, larger time for people to have as much time as they want to talk about this issue. So I'd recommend that for the next step.
I guess blame me for some of this, because I didn't realize we had this many people that would be here. And that's fine, I'm glad you're here. But we will schedule a time within the next month, and,
Thank you
Yeah,
all
go
for
through
coming.
Thank you
Yeah.
for coming.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I remind y'all, the cemetery 4 years ago offered use of the cemetery
Right.
for cell towers.
look what you're,
Thank you.
we're trying to make those two things juxtapose each other.
Right.
Everyone says 200 feet, you put the middle of the cemetery, you won't have any residents.
I remember well David Katzman coming to a meeting some years ago with all his attorneys. Maybe we should shut the door.
Susan's she's got to get batteries. She's gonna put the first map up here.
Look at that, and then we got to sit down and talk about that's bicentennial stuff, so.
Okay.
Ready,
Can we
set,
have
go.
quiet, please, ladies?
Hey, Kat? You gotta go, because you're too loud. Thank you.
We hear you. Go out in the other room.
All right.
Okay.
Good evening, Village President, Village Trustees. Good to see everybody again. Susan's going to put up I brought a few maps, or emailed a few maps to her earlier, so she's going to put them up to kind of, I'll talk from a little bit, just to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit here. So, but the first map that will be up here is basically a map that you've seen before, which is basically the storm sewer system in town, so this one. So, as you know, there are limited storm sewers to begin with. We have the section on Franklin Road to the north, and then we have the area through downtown, and then, of course, the Carroll Street drain, which begins in the FCA lots and goes down to Bowden, and then another section of sewers down at near 13 Mile on Franklin Road, and then you've got a couple subdivisions, Stonegate and Forest. Stonegate, yeah, there it is. Also have sewers. And then, of course, you have some private sewers like Franklin Woods and Crestbrook, which we did not look at.
Eddie, like 13 in Franklin, where does that water end up?
Yeah, it's one of the same thing.
Is it in Sally's basement?
No, actually, I believe, I'd have to look, but 13 Mile is the county's, and I believe some are just outlets to the 13 Mile ditch there. So,
I don't know.
yeah, and a lot of the other, same thing with the ditches that come down these streets, which I was talking to Roger about earlier, that ultimately drains the 13 Miles. So if the road commission, which I understand they've been doing some work recently, which is good, I don't know the extent of it, whether they're actually re-ditching, improving the ditching, but that only helps, obviously, because the more capacity you have in the ditches in the county's jurisdiction will only help, the neighborhoods as well.
Right.
So a brief, just kind of background again, using this map of what we've done to date. So we've looked at already, we've cleaned and televised 3,500 feet of storm sewer already. So this was done in the last year or so. So that's what Pipe Tech did for the village. And majority of that was the Carroll Street and FCA lot and all the sewers connected to the Carroll Street drain. They've also looked at 13 Mile down here in Franklin Road, on Franklin Road, north of 13. And they've looked at sections of Stonegate. We couldn't get in the last few sections because it was still underwater. We have not looked in the last couple of months to see if that had since receded. And then Forest Drive has had an issue with, again, being underwater, so they've not looked at that yet. But we've already looked at 3,500 feet of storm sewer, televised and cleaned. And really, from what we've seen, there's nothing major in any of those storm sewers, in particular in the Carroll Street drain. Now, obviously, there was a lot of debris, and I think, Bill, you even saw some stuff, let's just call it, being taken out. So there was definitely a lot of debris in those sewers in that drain that, has since been cleared, which is good. Also, as part of the work, as you know, you have 3 different contractors available to do ditching, pipe replacements. So last fall, we had D'Angelo Brothers come out, and they actually did another 600 feet of ditching, ditch clean out. Majority of that was on Evelyn Court, and they also did some down in Greenbrier, which, again, this map just shows you the storm sewers. It does not show you, obviously, the ditches, and it doesn't show you the road cross culverts, which we'll get to next. So to date, again, the storm sewer televised and cleaned, done 3,500 feet, 600 feet of ditching, and then now, Susan, if we can go to the next map, we'll talk about culverts a bit. Thank you. So, sorry, really hard to read here. We'll give you copies, but this is basically every road cross culvert that we have, and there's numbers with them, that we have encountered. We had a lot of these already by record, and then we found additional ones when we were out surveying the road for your road ratings.
You missed one.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So this is the overall map of the culverts with numbers. So if you go to the, drag down to the next one, because there's two, yep, right here. So this is the corresponding table that goes with that map. So you could look at the map and say, what's going on in Briarcliff here, number 36, whatever, and you go and you see if we had looked at that culvert yet, if we couldn't get into it, whatever the case may be. So this is a very handy, these two maps are handy to see what we have and what we've encountered and what we've done. So this whole overall summary will tell you, if you get a chance to look at it with your own eyes later, but again, we have 125 road cross culverts per our records. We've actually been able to inspect 105 of those. So there's still 20 that we have not inspected, which we'll talk about in a minute. Of the 105 that were inspected, we did already replace 4 of them. And those were, we did a couple in the Fairgrove, Wellington area, and then we did one on Devon, and then there was one on Birchway. So there's been 4 culverts that have been replaced thus far. Again, these are road cross culverts. We're not talking about driveway culverts. In our investigation of going back to the 105 that were inspected, we did cite 17 additional culverts that we feel need to be further assessed. Likely the majority of them need to be replaced, really. Probably like maybe 5 of those 17, we need to do a little more investigation to see, because we couldn't really get all the way through the pipe, and we didn't want to take all the debris out in case it would have caused a sinkhole. So, there's some more investigation on about 5 or so, but the 12 or 13 roughly, we know we're probably gonna have to replace those as well, as your next mode of business.
How does a sinkhole happen?
I'm sorry?
How does a sinkhole happen? Is it you remove the debris and it collapses?
Well, so if you remove the debris out of it, and maybe that debris was actually plugging the pipe,
Okay, so then-
and then the fines will get into the hole, and then.
Yep.
So we've done an extensive amount of culvert investigation thus far, and for the most part, the culverts were in pretty good condition. Again, we cleaned the heck out of a lot of them, and we reestablished the flow, but we did replace 4 already, and then another 12 or 13 likely we're going to have to replace, and potentially those other 5 may have to be replaced as well. So this is basically where we are, what we've done to date as part of this program. So moving forward, the priorities for the next fiscal year and what we want to look at next, which presenting here tonight, is to take these additional 20 culverts that we have not yet inspected, to take a look at those and assess the condition of those. And then again, we should replace these 12 or 13 culverts before they cause some major issues, and then look at those other 5. So those are sort of some of the low-hanging fruit items, because we've already assessed and we know what needs to be done for these culverts. So that's one section that I would say would be one of your priorities this year.
So, great work. I'd seen the work crews out there doing their work time and time again, so it's nice to see, reassured to see that happen. Are there any high-risk issues right now that the village should be aware of?
No, I mean, some of these culverts did have some small holes in there, but we did not see any gaping holes or collapses. Like if you had a collapse, well, yeah, you're basically at that point, you need to just dig it up and replace that. We did not see anything that extreme at all. So at this point, no, it's just a matter of, you want to definitely get these replaced soon, but they're not imminent.
Now, all these steps we've done, we've certainly heard a lot of complaints in the last year and a half, in that one corner, west of Franklin, just south of 14 there. The culverts underneath the roadways are a step. We've not looked at any culverts, any driveways yet, is what you're saying?
We've looked at, so we did some ditching and driveway culvert clean out on Evelyn, because there was an issue on the north side of Evelyn there. So, but that was a special project, right?
Yeah.
So we did work there. And then I know there's a couple other items that's been discussed in that area. One we've been talking with Roger for months on that, and you could say more if you like after, but there's one area where I know has been an issue for the last few years, but there's no simple definitely not cheap solution to the issue, where there's a natural low area at someone's driveway.
Greenbrier?
No, we're talking on Evelyn here still, yeah.
So the problem in Evelyn hasn't been fully solved yet.
Just the one area that.
The
you know,
one is
but-
remains. Everything else has been solved.
Mhm.
Is this the one that bubbles up?
Uh,
His front yard?
No, this is the one that the water basically goes down the driveway, because the driveway just drops, and then it goes behind and comes out of the, I forget the street name.
It's on Vincennes.
Vincennes.
It comes down
yeah.
their backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. that. But the one where the guys, it bubbles up in his front yard, that has been fixed.
I'm trying to remember, is that the one between Franklin Court and Franklin, that
It was on
section?
Evelyn, it's like the second, or that's probably the third house then.
If it's on the north side, if that's the one, then yeah,
On the
we've
north.
cleaned that
Good.
whole block. There was like 400 some feet of ditching, and then the culvert cleanouts that we did in that section, so.
So the ones that have failed, what are they mostly made of? Are these?
Old CMPs,
What's that stand for?
corrugated metal pipe, but basically what you see in most driveways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's exactly. So a lot of them over time, they've rusted out.
What are you
fall apart.
putting in now in its place?
Well, we're putting in the CMP still, but it's the galvanized, because your ordinance actually specifies, like when someone puts a drive culvert in, to use the galvanized CMPs.
They're new,
So-
improved.
Right, so it's not.
My Pillow 2.0.
Well, yeah, so, and that's something that you could potentially look at updating your ordinance if you wanted to allow different materials. CMP seems to be what a lot of communities still use, as long as it's the galvanized, coated, so.
In your professional opinion, where does that land in the spectrum of what people could put in? So, right, like if we did multiple things, would you recommend that there is something of higher quality?
I mean, again, you were just talking, probably in all these 99% of these areas, you're talking about just literally putting a pipe, so under a driveway. You're not really putting in a full section sewer.
Right.
If you're doing a full section, yeah, you probably put in HDP or something. We're doing that for water main nowadays. We're not even doing high-density polyethylene, so.
Which type of plastic?
Yeah. And it's basically more flexible than a PVC, so PVC is more rigid and can't really bend it that well.
But they last for decades, right?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, for sure, right.
Prime material,
Yeah. For a typical driveway culvert,
in terms of our next steps, there's so many elements of our water drainage system. So many elements.
Yeah.
One is literally drainage, drainage culverts in every lot, that they still exist. They function, they get to either the driveway culvert or the roadway culvert, right? I mean.
Not every one of those.
Well,
Go to the next.
what, think of the elements of the drainage system we have. Every house, every parcel has some combination of those three things, or lack of if it got removed. So as we think about solving these issues in the village, besides our main sewer things, like, do the culverts on your property still exist? Are they functional? They're not functional, how could that be corrected? Is the homeowner's fault, is somebody else's fault, right? If it's somebody, beyond you, then that's a different issue. If it's your driveway culvert, okay, how do we resolve that? In practical purposes, we probably have folks who aren't in a position,
Fred? Fred?
Hey, Fred.
who aren't in a position.
We got 10 more minutes.
Can I ask you a quick question before we
Well,
move on? I don't want to forget.
sure.
So all those elements, as we think about how we're going to solve the drainage in the village, what's the assessment on every one of those parcels, culvert, their driveway, piping, and the road piping. And I think we're still just in the first steps of it.
First step.
Are villagers responsible
That's what I
for
wanted to
clearing out the debris in their receptacle?
Yes.
In their driveway?
And do
Yes.
villagers know that?
Well, yeah,
that's
but
another
we've
question.
talked about that a lot. So technically, it may be their responsibility, but from a practical sense of
Yeah,
view, it may not get us anywhere.
Right.
Because lots of folks who don't have the physical ability, the
Right.
financial ability to do it, and where do we fit in
There
as
are
village government?
extenuating circumstances, I get that.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking the question about the materials for like a driveway pipe, because right now we would prohibit somebody from putting in a better pipe, right? And so that's why I was wondering, does it make sense to just leave it as it is? Or do we want to give somebody the flexibility to say, I don't want to deal with this in 10 years or however
The-
long. I want the premium.
No, the CMP will outlast.
Yeah,
If
if
you
it's-
put that in now, it's gonna outlast you
Okay.
in your house, right?
Yeah, if it, I don't
CMP
want to
is,
make an issue out
yeah,
of it.
and it still is stronger than, like, so HDP, you should really have a little bit more cover.
Okay.
Again, you could do it, but, you know, the CMP
like that.
is definitely more rigid and typical, so.
Betty,
Oh.
my question for you is that, where I'm looking at that map, I think that you missed one. Was literal. I was
Oh.
not
Okay.
joking. Because there is one across service between my house and my neighbor's house.
Okay.
And what I'm bringing up is a potential issue. There could be others that you missed as well, too.
And-
And that perhaps we should put this like, on our webpage and let people know that they could look at it, and that way they could say, hey, are we missing one?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I like that idea, because there's, we just heard from, 75 people.
Right.
We're not communicating well enough.
Right.
Right.
Or 90 people, right? So when we start talking about fixing drainage, we did this project for 3 years, we spent, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, my yard still floods.
And again, that's a good point, because it does bring up, like, and it kind of goes into this next map, which again, sorry, very small, but you'll see it later better. But as you know, when we did your Pazer road ratings, we had an additional person riding along. So pavement surface elevation rating, so it's, if you remember, SEMCOG reimburses community every 3 years to go out and have somebody, their consultant, which we did for you guys, to rate your roads, and we're basically rating your surface, what you're, so 1 to 10 is the basic rating of Pazer. 10 means a brand new road, 1 is poor, needs to be replaced. So we went out and did your ratings, which obviously are still rather good, because, we just completed the program, 3-4 years ago now, depending on what division. But we had an additional person ride along just to look at drainage issues, or potential drainage issues, or, as we say here, standing water, vegetation ditch, which could hold back water, blah, blah, blah. One of the items, like you were just saying, what I wanted to say, we have one column here for buried culverts. So I can guarantee, we obviously, like I said, we found additional culverts when we were doing this that we didn't have record of. And I'm sure there's other culverts out there that are probably buried, that unless someone already knows, I actually have a culvert here, or had one, and you can just see the tip of it, unless you're literally walking every single home.
My dog finds it every
So,
day.
and
There's somebody's-
maybe your dog can come working with it, yeah? No, but seriously, I mean, some of these are just so old, and,
Poll our puppies, because they all do that.
yeah.
Is this also being recorded
Yeah.
in live streaming?
Yes.
Okay, so the public is hearing this?
Yes.
So we need to maybe make a call out in our next email
Yeah.
about this issue, and call for people to respond if they feel they've been missed from this presentation.
Okay, Ed, keep going.
So, and just real brief, I'm not gonna go, obviously, much detail here, but we did find, and it's a measle map here of like standing water areas and some vegetation ditch areas, which again, we're not saying that these are real issues, it's just what we saw at the time. Maybe the water dissipates after a day or less, when we saw it, this is what we recorded. The vegetation may or may not hold back water, it's a case-by-case basis. We have to look further into it. But we at least wanted to get an initial idea of maybe what issues could be out there, so we can further assess these. And if people if they have a complaint and they call in and say, oh, okay, well, yeah, we did pick that up, and so maybe it is an actual issue that we should look into, further. So what we have here, again, some of these areas, and like the standing water is an example. I know Franklin Park Drive had some issues for sure, but some of these could be, again, low-hanging fruit, which could be part of your next phase of work for your next fiscal year, which would include the culvert work I talked about earlier. Some of these areas, it may just be as simple as putting a bucket in and taking a couple high points out, because debris is collected there over the years, and the water will start to flow again. So some of these could be low-hanging fruit like that, which we would recommend you do first, the low-hanging fruit. Now, we know that there's other areas and issues that have occurred that may be more on the private side of things. So I think what you need to concentrate first on is what you have, and the village right away, your system, the ditches that could impact your road integrity. So we have a number of areas here that we would look at further, and some that we already kind of have a good idea that we think probably could be improved by just basically doing a little bit of ditch clean out. So that's what we would recommend, is like your next phase for your next fiscal year is to look at a lot of these culverts, or not a lot, but the culverts that we have left to assess and then replace the ones that need to be replaced. Do some additional ditch clean out in some of these areas that we know looks pretty obvious on what's holding the water back. And not get into the areas where maybe we have to worry about easements and access at this point. Doesn't mean the village isn't going to help later, but I think for now you got to do the low-hanging fruit while you can to move forward. So that would be our recommendation to kind of move forward. And then another item, which you kind of get, goes again to what you're saying, and what kind of even ties into the buried culvert issue. I know over the years, and this is something we probably could have many conversations on, and we could talk about this separately at another workshop, but it's probably worth discussing policy change with your stormwater ordinance, possibly, as far as saying, okay, every development, I know if we're asked to do a review, we want to make sure that the drainage is accounted for and roadside ditches are installed and there's driveway culverts. That should be in place for every single new development that comes to town, period. And what, as you know, is what has happened over the years. Some of the developments that were approved, and they got the C of O, and everything was good. Looks like there's a ditch. After a couple of years, the ditch is suddenly gone. So I think it's worthwhile to not only obviously require that in the beginning, which you do, but to follow up on it, whether that's a building official, whether it's a consultant, whoever, to make sure that that they're still in place. So that could be another whole discussion on ordinance, stormwater management ordinance, updating your ordinance. So that's something, again, not low-hanging fruit now, but something in the future that could be looked at. And then just as far as the budget, obviously, we would just continue with the work that I said, as propose it. We would get prices, to do the work. I mean, we have pipe text prices for the culvert work. We would bid out if we're doing full replacements, it's 1 year, 3 contractors, or Jerry could do 2, like he's done already one, he could do that as well. So I think you want to make sure you don't obviously expend all that, because you want to make sure you have funds available for the following, fiscal year to, again, maybe look at even broader issues, that aren't so low-hanging fruit now. Take care of the ones that we can now, and then, take care of it, maybe a potential bigger issue the next year. So that's our summary for now, and if you have any other questions, let me know, but you'll have all these handouts so you can study them
Appreciate it.
with an eyeglass.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Okay.
All right, before we start rolling, I
2 minutes.
do not want to make this into a public
Susan, would you take the roll, please?
Ehrlich,
Here?
Goldberg,
Here.
Hanky,
Here.
Hanson, Lamont,
Here.
Solly,
Here.
Seltzer.
Here.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. You have an agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to approve it?
Motion to approve the
Any
agenda.
second?
Second.
Discussion?
There's an item on there at the end I'm not familiar with. I don't see any paperwork. There's some Gen Stan title
yeah,
property.
I agree.
There's no documents in here on that.
Are there documents, Roger, that you're going to hand out?
I don't think we got them finished.
All right, that should be removed then.
Let me look what Nancy sent over.
I don't recall that being on our agenda.
Yeah, let's take it off the
Item
agenda.
Point of process
There's no
is,
hurry on that.
Okay, take it off the agenda then. We'll scratch item E
Question.
under section 12.
how do things get added to the agenda that's not through the legal committee? I mean, how did that happen?
Hold on, hold on, what are we saying is?
There's an item E on that.
This one.
Why is that on the agenda?
That's the question he's asking.
That's what
Right.
Mark is asking. We're
So
the
we
legal
just took it off the
committee.
agenda.
It wasn't on
Scratch it
the
off.
agenda. It finds its way onto the agenda. It's about the third, fourth time.
How does,
It finds itself on.
so,
Well, I thi-
whoa.
To answer your question, I think it's,
no.
if two council members want something on the agenda, they can have it put on the agenda regardless of what the legal committee says. That's our practice. So I don't think two council members wanted this.
We did discuss it. What's the issue I'm concerned with?
Why is it,
What's the issue with Gen Stan division?
why is it on the agenda when there's
I
no
thought we did
paperwork or
discuss it.
nothing that
I
explains
raised
it?
it at our meeting.
Yeah, you
Asked
did.
it to be put on there. Because we're ready to move it forward and we need to.
We had discussed it at the legal committee, and we had expected that paperwork would have been done by the end of that week.
Okay.
And
And
it
it
did
didn't
not
get
get
done.
forwarded here in time to do that.
Okay,
So it
So
needs-
that's why it's not.
so we'll bump it to next month.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
But can
All
I
right.
get
So
a,
David,
can I get an
it-
understanding?
So
Is
David,
that
it was,
true?
it was discussed or was not
That you have
discussed?
two people?
Okay, that's not what I heard.
Is it correct, though, if you have two people who wants agenda on the, an item on the agenda, it doesn't have to go through
We have
legal?
I
always
don't
done
think it
that.
should because there's a whole point of having a legal committee to do this and.
No, I,
What would be
again,
the
no.
point?
Curious.
The point is that if you have a minority that wants to talk about an issue, they can talk about it. And we shouldn't
The
stifle
legal committee
that.
is responsible for
But the
setting
legal
the
committee
agenda.
can decide not to put it on even though people want to talk about it.
Well, that's true.
Well,
And I-
if, the
That's not a democratic process, guys.
but adding it to the agenda is different than a council member raising it during the open forum. Every council member has the ability to speak at their length versus adding it to the agenda.
Right, under
The
council
whole point of the legal
reports.
committee is to have the agenda fixed. You know what we're talking about. So I don't agree with just slipping things in at the last minute.
Okay. So
Happened a
we're,
number of times.
we're gonna scratch item 12E. Any other changes? All in favor of the amended agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have the May 8th minutes.
Motion to approve.
And second? No
I'll
second?
second.
Any comments about the May 8th minutes?
Something.
I had one comment.
I hit
Yes,
something.
sir. David?
So I just had one correction, on page 6, Planning Commission report. Just so Susan, someone said, or Pete said, you know, I met with Lamont, David, Dusan, Bevins, and himself. It was David Solly, not David Goldberg. So Goldberg needs to replace with Solly. That's all I had.
Okay. Any other changes to the minutes? All in favor of approving them? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Public requests and comments. Anybody out in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Please identify yourself.
My name is Jeff Weinger. I live at 25866 Balsam. I came before you guys about the 2 meetings ago, April 10th. I presented to you that I've had issues with drainage at my home. I missed whatever that presentation was. I came in late. The difference with my home is I had 0 drainage issues until a home was built next to me. I've been for 2 years trying to get the village to address the issues. When I came before you guys 2 months ago, I shared it with you. I delivered packages to each individual person. I heard from Mike Seltzer and Goldberg, and I have Mike Seltzer's email, and it basically says that it's being attended by the village administration and attorney. I haven't heard one single solitary word since April 24th, which was this email. Is there a time frame I can expect to hear some kind of response?
Right, Roger, we had talked a
So
little bit about.
has the bond money been released on this lot, on the gentleman who's doing construction next to him? Has his bond, his bond money been released? Any bond money he had posted for the project? What?
Why?
But there was also a number of pieces of work that he did without permits. What we've done in the last, since Jeff was here a month ago, we have spent time actually inspecting the site, determining that the commitment that had been made as a part of the work that they did permit was to route water from the front end of his property to the back end of his property, and it hadn't been done. We have issued notice to Tucci's to make those corrections. They have to come up with a drawing that shows where they're going to do that, given some of the other changes that they've made on the east side of the property. There's trees, there's rocks, and a number of other things that are there that sort of get in the way of that. There's also some slope in there, particularly as you get to the farther end of the property. It comes up a little bit before it goes down again. So whatever drainage there is has to take into accommodation all of those changes. That's part of what's been requested of them. It needs to be reviewed by HRC. And in the absence of that, we've told them that we will take additional steps. So we're serious about getting it fixed. We have not spent any time talking with Jeff about this, but.
Which is incredible.
Well,
honestly.
The fact is that we don't
I think I should be part of the conversation.
Right,
Agree.
right.
We have.
Sorry.
Can I share one other thing with the board here? This is not my consulting engineer. I presented you a document from my consulting engineer. This is HRC, who somehow finagled this bogus document through the village administration. I don't understand it, but I just want to read this one part of it. It says, "The as-built plan shows significant site features added that were not shown on the original site plan nor approved by the village, including the pool, deck, dry wells, and fence. In order to determine the impact of the site's unapproved features of the surrounding properties, the following information must be provided." So this is a statement from the village's engineer. I ask, how could these items be built during the permitting time? And don't get me wrong, this permit has been going on for 6+ years, but still, the village is responsible to oversee anything that is done on this property. How can it possibly be that he did all of these things that were not approved or reviewed?
Good question, yeah.
The fact is that we have a number of properties in the city that we don't.
That you close your eyes to while they're being built and let's let people do whatever they want? Because maybe then we need to make a statement that any resident who builds any property can just do as they please. Is that fair?
That's not what I'm suggesting at all.
Oh, I apologize, then I misunderstood.
Jeff, I think we hear you. Obviously, the communications aren't as good as they should be.
Then let me ask, I don't want to be up here. I don't even want to be in the building, but I'll ask you one more time. Please engage me. Please allow me to speak my part and show you, because it gets way worse than that one sentence that I just described.
Okay.
This, to me, is a document that was used to underhandedly try to get this parcel behind the village and for me to just accept the nightmare that I've got. So the only thing I ask is to please engage me. Let us all just be people. Talk about it. I'm not saying to you, this has to be the result. I'm saying to you, here's the realities. Here's the engineer's document. Here's a document from a licensed civil engineer that I spent my own personal money. He has his suggestions. And let's move forward. But Tucci cannot sit there just snoozing away while my home is in danger every day of the week. That's all I got to say.
Appreciate your comments.
You'll see me next month. If I don't hear you again, you'll see me the following month and the following month until somehow either you're sick to me to death or we all come together and just do what we're all paid to do.
One big hug.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
All right,
sir.
thank you so
Thank
much. Real quick,
Wait,
a couple of questions related to that though, is what's the timing for getting, they're coming back with a proposal. What's the timing on that?
We issued a letter to his neighbor requesting that they contact HRC to resolve this issue. I think we gave him 2 weeks. I don't know the exact, but that was in order for them to discuss this with HRC and execute the on-site plans that were approved.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is, what is our recourse for them doing substantial improvements to their property without a permit?
Remove them.
There are ordinances in place that state you must execute on the on-site plans. And I don't have it in front of me, but to that extent. Now, even if the Tucci's do execute on these plans, we hope it'll resolve it, but we don't know if it will. We do have records, I think show Mr. Weinger's property flooded approximately 15 years ago without this issue. So we're hoping it gets resolved if they execute on their plans, if they are forced to, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Because, there's the flooding issue and the recourse for him, and then there's just generally the recourse for the village of people making improvements without following the process.
Correct. But this may be a neighborly dispute as opposed to a village dispute, assuming that they execute on their
The reason that I
plans.
think some of us are having the reactions that we are is because, again, the matter of flooding certainly could be a neighbor dispute, legal issue between neighbors. But not executing the permits necessary to make improvements is a village thing.
And that's exactly what we're pursuing, is,
Okay.
now, there are instances in which swimming pools have been built without village permits. Folks are at the end of a road that we don't get down very often, and unless somebody talks to us about what's going on at the neighbor's house next door, we don't know that some of this stuff has been done. And that's a problem with our code and the liability that comes to somebody for not following our building code, and the permitting is very, very weak. So it's difficult for us to follow up on that and have any kind of real leverage when it comes to people not
What's
doing
the
their-
consequence? What's the
All
consequence?
right,
I think
fine.
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
In this particular instance, they had committed in writing to this drainage and the routing of that drainage on the east side of the property so that any runoff from what they had done would not add to the problems that Jeff has with his property. And our intent is to get it to that stage where that water is resolved. And that's where we're focusing at the moment.
So is this a matter of, and again, the other issues aside, that we do need a code improvement to give us some more teeth?
That's
Or at least a review of it?
That's one of the things that I've asked Peter to look at.
Okay, thank you.
How about if we take a timeout here and let's get the police, I see they're all together here, and let's get their awards presentation.
But let's make sure we communicate back to Jeff so he doesn't feel. he's-
Ready? Sorry for the delay here.
Hi,
sir.
Chief.
So this portion, I'm just going to do my normal monthly, and then we'll be back on your agenda in a little bit here for the.
Susan, can you turn that off just for like this one time while we're doing this, just because?
The intent here, Dan, was to get your guys in here while they were here and
Oh,
bring you back
fantastic.
afterwards.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
Let's just do
The Officers Awards now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me grab my other notes, I left them out there.
Okay.
Apparently. Bill, one thing that we didn't do was ask after Jeff left if there was anybody else who wanted to speak in public.
Right, we'll finish that up. Right.
So thank you. First off, I'd like to thank some folks that are here in the audience. We have representatives from both Franklin and Bingham Farms Mobile Watch who came to see the officers get their award, so I appreciate them. They're a great partner with us, and so we certainly appreciate them and thank them for what they do to help us with our jobs. Also want to thank Stephanie, who's here. Stephanie is one of our police clerks, as you probably know, and if not for her and Rose, these officers would not be able to do, and I wouldn't be able to do what we do every day. So thanks to her and Rose, and we greatly appreciate them. So these officers, just as a reminder, the awards, just as a reminder, every year at this time, we have an awards committee that gets together. It's myself, the lieutenant, a sergeant, and the union president, and we go over all the nominations for awards that we had received from the previous year. The nominations can come from other officers, they can come from the community, they can come from me or any of the other command staff. Normally, they come from the command staff, and we sit down and we try to figure out which ones are worthy of actual recognition and which ones are just great job, but not necessarily worthy of getting additional recognition for. So I love this time of year. I love being able to talk about this for a couple of reasons. Not only one, because we're able to recognize their great work, but also to let the villagers know that there's actually stuff that goes on here in Franklin and in Bingham Farms that you might not be aware of. Some pretty, in some cases, violent things, which is unfortunate. In the cases that we have tonight that we're going to recognize the officers for, there's 6 different investigations that we're going to be recognizing officers for. Of those 6, 4 of them involve loaded firearms that were used in the commission of the crimes. And I'll get into that with each one of them. I will try to run through these as quickly as I can. And actually, the first one I was going to give involves Sergeant Mydlowski and Officer Derek Weesey, but neither one of them could make it today for personal reasons. So let me just mention that one really quickly. That case involved a road rage incident on Telegraph Road. It was reported to us through a 911 caller that someone had pointed a gun while driving down Telegraph at another vehicle. At the time, both Sergeant Mylowski and Derek Weesey, Officer Weesey, were in the area. They quickly located the car that was involved, put a felony traffic stop on it around 12 Mile, ordered the gentleman out of the car who was non-compliant, but ultimately did get out of the car and was taken into custody. The loaded firearm was found underneath his seat. In discussing later on with the witnesses, it was determined that the person who had pointed the gun at the other car said, "I'm going to kill you," as he said that. So he was taken into custody. He was charged by the prosecutor's office with felonious assault, and we have the gun in custody, and the officers did a fantastic job. They were in the right place at the right time and handled it quickly and got a dangerous felon off the street. So unfortunately, they're not here tonight, so I can't give them their awards, but I just wanted to mention that one. The second one I will mention, and I'll bring up the officers involved in that. So Justin Wells, Sergeant Wells, and Officer O'Shea. Kevin, come on up. You guys. Stand in front of the mugshot. So this case, I'm not going to read to you word for word what's actually in the citation. I just want to make sure I got the date right. Yep. It was November 30th of 2022. So these folks were working the night shift at the time. They had a call from a interested motorist, again coming down Telegraph Road, of a truck that was driving down the road, bouncing off the curbs, basically. It looked like an intoxicated driver and causing a problem for other motorists. They responded to the area, didn't initially find the car. It wasn't on Telegraph Road. But in their diligence, they started searching all the streets along Telegraph in Franklin, and sure enough, they located the truck that was involved in this. It was on Bloomington Court. It was parked partially on the front lawn of a home on Bloomington Court, as I recall, and the driver was passed out over the wheel. After quickly determining that the driver was passed out and the truck was running and in gear with his foot on the brake, they were able to reach in, turn the car off, and then determine that he was actually in a medical emergency where it looked like he was overdosing. So they administered Narcan, which is the spray up the nose to stop an opioid overdose, which worked, saved his life. Brought him back around, and ultimately the fire department was called by these two. They treated him even further at the scene. was taken to the hospital where a search warrant was gathered for his blood to determine exactly what he had in his system. Turns out that the MSP crime lab, Michigan State Police crime lab, determined that he had fentanyl, and he had probably overdosed on fentanyl. So subsequently, the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office charged him with driving under the influence of dangerous drugs. And they not only saved a life, but took a dangerous person off the street. And so for that, we're going to give them a departmental citation, which involves ribbons for their uniforms. Make sure I give them the right ones here. The colors are significant for those of you that don't know. It's very much taken off the military system. So in this case, the blue, white, blue is a departmental citation. They will be able to put those ribbons on their uniforms when they're wearing their dress uniforms. They also receive one of our challenge coins, which we developed specifically for recognizing officer awards. So let me give you the two of those, and they also will get a write-up that I have here. So congratulations to them. Let me give you your thing. We have to actually have you go through these real quick with me because they got out of order since my other guys didn't show up here. Oh, here we go. There's Kevin's. And there's Justin's. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Great job, guys.
Okay, next one up, Jeff Gorski. Officer Gorski's been with us quite a while now. He's a pleasure to have on the department. He has very strong attention to detail, as this case will point out. And on May the 3rd of this year, he was dispatched to a routine traffic accident, which we get dispatched to a few times every day. In this particular case, a 3-car accident that occurred, Jeff was the first to respond, got there, started talking to the individuals involved, and then noticed something strange about one of the cars that had dealership license plates on it, which is not that unusual, except it was really not a new car that one would think had come from a dealership. Upon further investigation, the plate registered to a automobile dealership, we'll just call it a dealership at this point, out of Waterford, but the actual VIN registered to an individual in Southgate, Michigan. So it didn't match up with what the driver was saying. In digging deeper in it, Jeff found out that the actual address that this quote-unquote dealership was using was actually a tanning salon in Waterford, and they were not selling any cars out of this tanning salon. He impounded the car, didn't have insurance, impounded the plate, found another dealership plate in the trunk of the car, and then contacted the Michigan Secretary of State Police to work with them on this case, and found out that everything involved in that incident was fraudulent. They were fraudulent plates and a fraudulent business, and it was all because he dug on a routine property damage accident. I should mention the other aspect of this case is that the driver was less than cooperative. How would I say that? He was obstructionist in every way, shape, or form. So Jeff did a phenomenal job piecing that all together. It wasn't certainly a serious felony crime, but it certainly goes to his attention to detail and his great hard work that he does for us on a daily basis. So Jeff, for that, you are also going to get a departmental citation, and our thanks for a job well done. So. Make sure that I give you the right one. There it is. So great work on it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
This next case.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Have it right. Too many pages here. I'm going to call Officer Doolin, Chris Doolin, up in front here. What's that? Right over here, ma'am. She's off today, that's why she's not in uniform, so it's her day off. And also congratulations are in order, she's about to get married, so. Where's Phil, actually? Where's the lucky guy? Oh, he's hiding in back, okay. Anyway, so this case involves another road rage incident, also on Telegraph Road, also involving a loaded firearm. This one was displayed as the driver was traveling north on Telegraph. At the time that the witnesses saw this case, they didn't know where the actual threat had occurred. They couldn't articulate where it was. So both Bloomfield Township Police and Chris were dispatched to the area to try to find the car with the gun. They did find it ultimately way up at Hickory Grove and Telegraph by the time they got it stopped. And sure enough, there was a loaded handgun in the front seat of the car when they stopped to arrest it. Chris took him into custody. The gun was seized. There's two Bloomfield Township police officers that were also involved in this case, Officer Jason Fullman and Officer John Schlauback, who I will recognize at their roll call coming up here real soon. The three of them worked as a team, as we often do with Bloomfield Township. They're a phenomenal police department, and they got this dangerous person off the road. Chris was able to interview the driver and got him to confess to what he did with his gun. He claimed he was just looking at it as he was driving up the road, but in reality, he was charged with felonious assault by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, and she did a phenomenal job with that. And so she gets a certificate, certificate from us. And like I say, we will also recognize the Bloomfield Township officers for their great work on the case as well. So great job, Chris. Do you want to say a few words? You look like you wanted to say something.
I'll be Tucker next time.
Okay. Oh, I just got that. Oh, she's changing last names. Okay, I got it. Okay. All right, then this next case involves a whole bunch of people. And so I'm going to call up Logan Hall, Chris Doolin, Dennis Berry, Jeff Gorski. And again, there's some Bloomfield Township officers involved. But also notable is a guy you've heard of before named Brian Crane. Brian, Brian, stand wherever you like. You want to talk? For those of you that don't know, Brian was our lieutenant here, who retired and left me hanging, but he is now working for Bloomfield Village Police Department. And on the day of this call, he was working that day and responded and helped out all of our officers on this case, and we greatly appreciate that, along with a couple other Bloomfield Township officers who, again, I'll recognize at their department at a later time. But this case happened in November this past year. We refer to this case in the department as the body slam case. It was a domestic violence incident that occurred literally right out there on the village green. We had some excellent witnesses who reported that an assault was in progress. A woman was dragged and body slammed right onto the village green, so much so that she ended up losing some clothing when she was slammed to the ground. She was then dragged back into her car, and the witnesses reported that the vehicle left northbound on Franklin Road. I think Logan, a Bloomfield Township officer, and Brian Crane were the first three to find the car right at Maple and Franklin. Made the quick stop on the car and took everybody out to figure out what was going on with the case. In this particular case, the driver was a convicted felon who was carrying a loaded automatic weapon also in his vehicle. Was it right under the seat? Right under the front seat of the car. And so they got him out and took care of that. The victim in this case, which was his girlfriend, fiance, had definite injuries on her, which were photographed and taken and used in the charges against him. Ultimately, the driver was charged with domestic violence incident, carrying a concealed weapon, and felon in possession of a concealed weapon. They did a phenomenal job with it. And one little, I guess, kind of funny sidelight of the whole thing is that the individual that was arrested also is a published author, and he published a book about marriage counseling. So apparently he never
That's one
read,
way.
he never read his own book.
Didn't get the
So anyway, as I said, he was a convicted felon with a loaded gun, and all of these folks did a phenomenal job getting him off the street. And for that, we have unit citations for each of you, which is a different colored one. So let me get those out. You know what, I'm going to ask you to dig those out for me. And I'm going to get the rest of it stuff together for you. These guys really worked as a team, and again, I can't thank Bloomfield Township enough. They are just a phenomenal partner with us on virtually everything we do. For those of you that have been on council a while, you remember that about 3 years ago, we changed our dispatch center from Farmington Hills to Bloomfield Township. At the time, I have to say it was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make as the chief, because we had been with Farmington Hills for over 30 years and really had a great working relationship with them. But we thought this was a better fit for us, and it turns out it's been a phenomenal fit for us. And the teamwork that we show, we assist them, they assist us. It's just been great all the way around. So we appreciate that. And again, all of these cases, these past few that I just mentioned, could not have been done without their help as well. So great job, guys. And Brian, I'm going to ask you to get those out when you get in the back there. Sure. So, yep. All right. And the last case I will mention is a very violent case, unfortunately, a violent home invasion case. And so I'm going to ask Mike Bastinelli and Kimberly, you're sitting right there. Kimberly? I didn't see you.
I snuck in.
I'm sorry. Kimberly, geez, I forget all the folks that actually worked on that case. It was a big team effort as well. Jeff Gorski again, Chris Doolin. If you could come back in again. There's also a couple of Bloomfield Township officers that responded on this case. So earlier this year, I have to back up a little bit. One of the many calls that we get for service every day is what we call a 911 hang-up call. A lot of it is butt dials, frankly, from cell phones, is that, especially from construction sites and other things where somebody's phone will be in a back pocket and it'll set off a 911 call. We always send an officer out to verify that everything is okay when we get those calls, even if we can't get somebody back. So in this particular case, somebody called from a home in Bingham Farms, and they hung up without saying anything. So the dispatcher sent Kimberly and Mike to the initial response to that. Like I say, we do probably 10, 15, 20 of these in a week. That's how common they are. They get there and initially knock on the door, and a gentleman answers the door, and they told him what they had, and he was not completely forthright and didn't really say why he was there or what he was doing there, and couldn't really articulate anything really well about why he was there. When they asked for the actual homeowner, he said she was out walking her dog. And so they waited for a while for the homeowner to come back, and ultimately she did come back. What it turned out to be was he had broken into the house with a loaded firearm through the back door late at night, while she was just sitting in the house by herself. At the end of the day, this was a stalking incident. This individual had driven all the way from Louisiana to stalk this individual. He had been stalking her online for several months before that, we found out later. And then he ended up driving up here, parked his car way away in Southfield, walked the river. Their house is actually on the river. We think walked the river bed or walked near the river. He was soaking wet when they talked to him, and got to her house and came through the back door with the intent on assaulting her. She was smart enough to get out of the house quickly and dialed 911, but she couldn't say anything, so she hung up real quick, and these folks responded. Now, when they found out that he shouldn't be in the house and that he had broken in, they immediately went to take him in custody, and he resisted arrest, and they had to use their skill and technique there to get him into custody and arrest him without further incident there. When they got him to booking, they found rounds, 9mm rounds? 9mm rounds on his person. And additionally, in a search later at the house, found some of his property inside the house, as well as the firearm that was in the house as well, that he had brought with him. So it was a very scary thing. He is still sitting waiting trial at the Oakland County Jail. Was in the military, so he knows how to use weapons. And these guys did a great job in getting this person off of the street. And for that, we're going to award him some awards. Now, the two that initially responded were Mike and Kimberly. They're going to get departmental citations, and all the other folks that were involved in various aspects of this case are going to get unit citations. For example, when this vehicle was located in Southfield the next day, Jeff wrote the search warrant for that and impounded the vehicle, conducted a search, found a lot more evidence inside the car that indicated that he was going to do this crime all along. And so, very scary situation. It could have been much worse had they not given it the attention to detail that they did. So we appreciate them for that. And for that, I'm going to give them, unit citations and departmental citations. So Mike. And then I have, of course, their certificates as well. I'll let you pass those out. So you guys are done. Thank you very much. Excellent job. So that's all I have in the way of awards. Thank you for letting me take the time to do this. I think when we started this a few years ago, doing it in front of council, it's been great for several reasons. Number one, you get to hear the great work, but I think they appreciate also getting some face time in front of you all so that you can hear some of the good stuff that goes on. So thanks for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse us. Angelina.
Okay, we're in the middle of public requests and comments. Are there any more public requests and comments? If not, let's roll on with reports. Chief Roberts, you're back up for your police report.
Okay. I'll be very brief. We had a Touch a Truck event that was phenomenal last month over at Bingham Farms Elementary School. We had the horse over there and a couple of our vehicles and several officers over there. Lots and lots of kids, which is phenomenal. So we love doing those things. That was a great thing, and I know Tony had several fire trucks over there as well. I did want to follow up on the Franklin Park Drive incident from last meeting. As you recall, there were several individuals here last meeting that were concerned about speed limits on Franklin Park Drive and other issues. As I mentioned, we put our electronic speed sign out there right after that meeting, basically, for 2 weeks. And over 1,000 cars went by eastbound on Franklin Park Drive, the speed sign, in that 2-week period. The average speed was under 22 miles an hour. So, which is very similar to what we see when we put the speed sign up in other places as well. The problem is one of perception. I don't know how you combat that. People, when they're walking and a car goes by them closely, they think it's going much faster than it actually is. That is not to say that we don't have speeders. We do. And the study showed that. There are speeders that go down our streets, but it's not a systemic problem, and I just wanted to raise that. We will continue to hit that whenever we can, but we only have one of those speed signs, and so we have to move it around both villages as much as we can. Last night, and I know I've hit this several times, but last night we had 6 or 7 incidents again where vehicles were targeted by thieves. They are always targeting, in our cases, vehicles that are left unlocked. And so we ask that you please, everybody lock their cars at night when they're parked outside. And most of the incidents that occurred last night were up along Inkster, between 14 and 13 area, although we did have a couple in Bingham Farms as well. Farmington Hills and Bloomfield Township also got hit last night with the same type of crew. And in fact, there was a vehicle stolen in Bloomfield Township right nearby.
Literally, they're just checking doorknobs.
It's exactly what they're doing. In one instance last night, we did have video of the thing, actually pretty good video, except for that both subjects are wearing masks, and they're also wearing gloves, so that we're not going to get anything out of that. But there were 2 cars parked next to each other in the driveway. The one car was unlocked, the one car was locked. The car that they locked, they checked it real quick, it was locked, they didn't do anything. The car that was unlocked, they rummaged through it and took very little, actually, out of that particular one. But, yeah, it's just crimes of opportunity.
Yeah, nothing's really being broken into.
No. Under the law, opening a door is called breaking into,
Well, no,
but yeah,
sure,
but
yeah,
yes.
not an actual break-in. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right,
by
right.
law.
So just, yes, we could easily prevent these crimes if the cars were just locked. We appreciate that. Last thing I will mention, maybe some of you heard this, Lieutenant Mike Bastinelli, who was just up here, did he leave? No, that's okay. He announced his retirement. He will be leaving us in September. Yeah, I know. I know. I tried that. I put denied on his request, but it didn't work. So he has submitted to the MERS retirement system that he's going to be leaving September 15th. And we will figure out a replacement for him. As you know, he's the number 2 person in the department. I've lost 3 number 2s since I've been here. I lost Bill Castro and Brian Crane, who was just up here, and now him. And so I've been working with Roger on a replacement and how we might restructure a little bit, given the fact that that we need a number 2 person. And so I think we'll have a plan for you really shortly, or for the Personnel Committee really shortly on that. Based on some other communities in the area and what they've done. So I want to let you know that. You'll see a flyer coming out for Mike's party in September as well. It'll be right here at the Krieger House. So we hope you can attend that as well. That's all I have, unless you have some questions.
So a couple of things. First, thank you. Excellent leadership for all these awards. You've been here for a long time. I know a lot of it's for your leadership and your leadership team. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
A couple of things about the speeders on that Franklin Park Drive. That speed sign, are we using that 100% of the time, 50% of the time? How often is that moved around the village?
Every time. So it's actually a great system. It sends me an email when the battery is dying on that thing. And so I get an email and I say, okay, time to move it. And then we have a list of, okay, it's been in Franklin for the last 2 weeks. Now we move it to Bingham Farms somewhere, and then we'll move it back, and we try to move it all over the place. So if you don't see it here in Franklin somewhere, chances are it's over on Bingham Road or Bristol Lane or one of those other roads over there.
Is it effective? I mean, when people see it, they slow down. So I'm not surprised you're 22 miles an hour. Is it effective?
As far as, I think it's most effective for the walkers that go by and like to see it, and they think that it's providing them some peace of mind, that maybe somebody sees it, they're going too fast and will slow down.
How long have you had it? What's its expected life?
We have had that for probably 3 or so years. I actually, the life of the equipment itself is pretty long. The batteries we have to buy every year or so, which they're not too bad. They are expensive. I thought maybe you would have some questions about how much those things cost in case we wanted to buy more of them, and they're not cheap. It was $5,500 to purchase one, plus then every year you have to pay $1,200 for the software package that runs all of these nice charts and things.
I'm glad you're prepared, because that's where I was going to go. So in light of the things we do and perception of, for our residents, that we're on top of these things, so that might be something we consider. $5,500 plus $1,200, not a lot of money necessarily for peace of mind.
So
it's a great.
Put that in the
Real quick
budget.
question.
Let me talk about it a little bit.
Sorry, real quick question with regard to the software package. Is that per unit, or is it a base, and then if we buy multiple?
Unfortunately, it's per unit. We used to have the package, frankly, on the permanent sign across here. We took it away because we found out we didn't need it that much there. And if we wanted to do a study on Franklin Road, we could put out the temporary one. So we figured we'd save $1,200 a year and take that one away. Unfortunately, it's by unit. And
Thank you.
yeah.
A couple other things. So, there was an incident, a week ago Friday night. I was driving home with my daughter. We're at 14 Mile and Telegraph. We saw the hit and run. We called the 911 on it. Your officers responded quickly on it. The case being, and none of you know this, but, you know, I was returning home late night with my daughter from the hospital. I'm talking to her about making full and complete stop, the turnaround, and at the light. And as we're watching this happen, full speed, an SUV drives right through 14 Mile, hits another SUV crossing, is my daughter's friends of all things. We saw it happen, and the more we talked about it, as they were crossing westbound on 14 Mile Road, I was thinking, like, you know, I'm trying to tell my daughter, like, you know, defensive driving and all that. I really realized that all of that, you know, the nice signage, the trees, the shrubbery, it really obscured this young driver's ability to see the southbound vehicle coming. And the more I thought, like, you know, it really must have been hard for her to see it, and she had no idea that that was coming. So from a safety point of view, let's take a look at that southbound Telegraph. They came full speed. That poor driver, she never had a clue what was happening. And had they been 5 feet shorter, it would have hit it broadside on the passenger and really would have done serious damage to them. So it was a week ago Friday, and your two officers came right away.
Yeah, it turns out, I believe that accident, and I don't remember that, I'm pretty sure that one turned out to be a Bloomfield Township accident. Was it a westbound vehicle and a southbound?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would have been a Bloomfield Township accident, but we always go on both of them. But yeah, that is Telegraph is certainly our biggest threat or concern in terms of traffic. There's just so much vehicle traffic on that road, and the speeds tend to get higher. And then during rush hour times, you see all kinds of lights being blown there on Telegraph. So it's
that southbound side seems obscured by all the trees,
We'll take a
the
look at that.
shrubbery.
Yeah.
And like I had no idea how the 7-year-old could have seen it when.
Well, we'll take a look at that again. I guess I hadn't paid attention to that, so I'll take a look at
I
that.
just wanted to speak to the Franklin Park Drive issue, because I inserted myself in that after the last council meeting when we had that young woman come speak before us.
Right.
And I went over there to visit with them and met with all the parents, and they were very concerned about it. So, and I brought that to you, and I appreciate your swift response, putting that digital clock in place. Going back after that, they were very relieved and appreciative. It did seem to them like it had slowed the speeding, whether it did or not, we'll never
Yeah.
know.
Right.
They did still suggest that they would like to have a stop sign. I know we've had that discussion. I went back there this morning for a final wrap-up, and of course, I didn't realize school was out.
School's
I
out.
stood there waiting around,
Yeah.
and there were no parents, and there was no bus, and I thought, is this a holiday? And then I came home, and anyway, I figured it out. So, thank you for that. I
Yeah.
do think that the folks would be here tonight if there were a continual problem.
Yeah.
That is an example of us being responsive to our villagers, and I think that's incumbent upon us to continue to be responsive in that way.
And the only thing I would add there is if you are thinking about making sign changes there, please consult the experts at Hubble, Roth and Clark. I mean, they are truly the experts.
And we did speak to that with the parents
Yeah.
in my visits, and I had multiple visits, and I told them, we were looking into it.
Yeah.
I still haven't heard back as to whether there was any need to continue the probing, but school's out, so we'll resume in the fall, I guess.
Two real quick questions.
Sure.
So I did receive a cell phone update today with regard to those break-ins. It was
Right.
pretty nondescript. Is
Yeah.
that coming out of Oakland County then?
No,
Is that,
we
that is for us. Okay.
Yeah, I wrote we're limited into the number of characters
Yeah.
that we can put on that, so that's why. The email's actually, if you got the email's actually more inclusive, I guess, than the text messages, yeah.
Don't have the email signed up for that. Because
Yeah.
one of the things that I was wondering is if we time-stamped when we think it occurred, that maybe we could kind of crowdsource some response as far as going back and checking Ring cameras and things like that. Because I know that's the first thing that I did is went and checked all of my Ring cameras. So
Oh,
just
great.
something to consider.
Yeah, we know for a fact that they were seen by one of our residents at about 1 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately for us, that resident, for whatever reason, didn't call us, but they were in his vehicle at the time. He saw them and yelled at them, and they ran away. But whatever. Again, this is perception. One of the things that I hear the most that drives me crazy is that I hear residents that say, I just didn't want to bother you guys. That's what we do. That's what we get paid for. It's no bother. Please call us anytime. We don't mind at all. So
One last thing on the digital clock. I was just up at my other home in Charlevoix, and on M66 as you
That's your
approach-
third home, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
On M66 approaching the main street, there was a digital clock with a red and blue light flashing. So as you approach it, if you're going over the speed limit, you get what feels like a police officer.
Okay.
It was great. I don't know if you've seen that.
So
Well,
it's flashing for you. You're telling me
No,
it's
it
flashing.
flashes for everybody. Well, I mean, if you're going 1 mile over.
We don't have red and blue, but we can set ours where it will flash at you after, say, after 10 over, and then if you go over that, it also looks like it's taking a picture of you as well. Yeah.
Well, this was really effective, I thought. I mean, it was little lights on the, underneath the sign that just flashed as you were approaching.
And you can't trick those things. I mean, they pick up the speed
Yeah,
that
it's right.
you are from a distance. So if you see it and then slow down as you're approaching it and are going slow as you pass it, it's picked your speed up.
It's already got you. It's just like a radar in a car. It's the same principle, same Doppler principle, yeah.
It's a good tool.
Just to make sure that
that?
that
Does
is
it take photos? Asking for a friend.
You know, it has,
asking.
it has the ability to take photographs. Right now, the settings on it are only for if it's being tampered with, then it will take a photograph. So for example, every time the officers move it and they're taking it off, I get a picture of them taking it off. We did have one time where several kids were screwing with it. They were trying to rip it off the pole, and we got great pictures of the kids.
great.
So, but they never did get it off the pole, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Chief Alvarado, Fire Department.
Good evening. You've already had a long meeting, so I won't add to it. You have my written report. Other than that, we have a number of things in the hopper, but nothing to report on. Pending your questions, that'll conclude my report.
That's simple.
Yep.
Any questions?
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you,
Perfect,
sir.
thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Lance, Treasurer's Report?
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list report for this month totals $324,034.61. The amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending, and the expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes the large entry of $124,254.50 for the payment of estimate 12 to asphalt specialists. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations. The list of account balances in the package is as of June the 1st. We hold at First Merchant Bank, and the balances held in interest-bearing insured CDs held at multi-bank securities also included in the report. Any questions?
Questions? No, sir. Thank you very much. Current bills, you have a list of bills in your book. We have a motion to
Motion
approve
to-
the payment of these bills?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
I'll second.
And questions?
One question. The very last entry, Johnson Landscaping on the last page, 526, 77K for snow plowing, tree debris cleanup. That's still going on, 77K in May.
That was for March, actually, it's finishing up March.
And it included part of the ice storm.
So it's just billed and paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the signage aspect? Did he go, did they straighten some
Just
signs?
sometimes they have to put up signs that get knocked down, or they replace the signs.
Yeah, okay, so typical fixing the
Correct.
signs.
Poles and mains. Stop signs.
Two other questions regarding a Hubble Roth Clark. I see an entry for lot split assistance. I see another $400 for museum property line staking. Can you explain what those are for?
That was, we've been working on getting the titles squared around in terms of the properties at what is known as the Gen Stand site. The county has the entire property titled in the name of the Historic Society, and we need to go in and do a title split in order to get that to reflect the way it was intended, based on the Druish grant to the city and the village, and then the subsequent agreement with the Historic Society about them having the house and the property to the north of that.
Right, and that's what the agenda item was about, but we don't have the.
We don't have one.
Okay, fine.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
For, what would it be, the second page, sunset maintenance with regard to the janitorial services, is that on a monthly cadence, or what is the cadence for that bill? Okay, so that's $11.50 a month.
And that's for like 3 buildings. right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And the restroom.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All in favor of approval? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Next thing, special reports. I have nothing. President's report. Council?
Yeah, I would like to report on update from Next. Good news that Next has been in search of a home. They've been trying to secure the property that the facility is in from Birmingham Schools for years and haven't been able to, and it's been a real touchy situation because Birmingham Schools is having financial problems and all kinds of other issues. They made an offer to the Birmingham YMCA, which is right down the street, around the corner on Lincoln, and they have consummated a deal to take over that property, looking like September, October, but we'll be able to stay in the current facility at Midvale School until that time. And the YMCA is going to build a brand-new property at 13 in Woodward area. They secured some property, and they're going to build a brand-new, spanking new, sparkling YMCA to compete with all of the health clubs that have, rendered them less competitive. So it's a great opportunity, and everybody at Next is relieved, and I'm pleased to report that.
That's good. That differs slightly than the letter I read. The letter I read said they were sharing, but now I guess it's.
No. They bought the property, and it'll be retrofitted specifically for Next. And there'll be there won't be any concern about being uprooted at any point, which has been an ongoing issue for years, so. It's a great community resource for our seniors, and if people have not experienced it, you should. It's at the Midvale School in Birmingham, and it's a wonderful facility.
From Oxford. The only issue I would bring up, I can bring up now, or I can bring up at the cell phone, but should we have a conversation about the next steps for this forum event that happened today that did not go off
I thought that the purpose of what was supposed to be a 30-minute subcommittee meeting, or a meeting of the body of a whole with the subcommittee, was so that we would make a decision on where we were at, either to eliminate us, take it out of subcommittee, or maybe, as I had some notes in a discussion that I was going to raise at the time, or maybe better redefine or specifically define some of our objectives or some of our goals that we should be trying to get information on. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're maybe at that stage where we've been in subcommittee for probably too long, in the sense of it's apparently not, when we as a subcommittee then report to council like this, as we've been doing, isn't translating and finding its way out.
It is not,
to the
obviously.
residents.
Because I thought, we've talked about it often, I think part of the reason
Ann
why.
has been very diligent
Yeah.
in making sure that we were doing that, which is why unfortunately she can't.
Which is
be
why
here.
we're supposed to be
We
meeting
were
today.
having this today,
Yeah.
and she had reached out to me when we found out she couldn't be here, and said, during that time, could maybe we do that? Unfortunately, that time period went another direction,
You kinda got
so that
co-opted.
might still need to be done.
Well, now I think we're committed to following through
Well, now-
based upon what
Well-
happened tonight and having a bigger meeting, whether we
Yeah,
do
so-
that next month or.
So I think I'm with you, that the whole point, the intent of today's meeting was not an open public forum about all sorts of thoughts about it, it was
Yeah,
bringing
and
council up to
Kathy has
speed.
raised the issue of safety. At the last meeting, she gave us a bunch of information. One of the items on this
Mm-hmm.
list of narrowing down the scope of the subcommittee included, and then, you know, again, we're not scientists, we're laymen, and you can get a whole genre
Wow.
of information that cover it from here to here and everywhere in between.
Yes.
And how do we as laymen pick which is right and which is wrong along the way? But that was part of what we were gonna decide is, should we be engaging in that, or who is it that should be engaging in that?
For the rest of the council, part of the conversation when we started meeting separately was to park that health question off the table. Because like you said, David, pick your opinion and there's documents to fill up whatever opinion you so choose. So our intent the last 2 years probably by now was, what's the best technical solution to answer the question that was raised? The question was raised and it's proven so in the data that has come back, hey, we have all sorts of spots in the village that had 0 or a 1, right, those red dots in terms of things. So it's real, it's a physical thing. Our intent was, what is the best solution for it, the least aesthetic impact to the community, which is where we had been driving for the last 8-9 months. That was the intent, and not to have any conversation all about health, because that's a rabbit hole.
We had to work our way down. You know, the first was, can it be done without a cell tower?
Yes.
And we've, I think, gotten to the point where it appears that it can be,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when the data shows us where there's a node, there's better service,
Yes, it was highly correlated.
very highly correlated. So I think that part of it has been done. I think we're moving forward on the basis, which I think most residents approve of, is that we're not pushing the idea of a centralized cell tower in the middle of the village.
Mm-hmm.
And as we had mentioned, there aren't, and I know that one of our, Kat's got other ideas which may be out there, but none of them have been really
Well,
presented to us
so-
as being substantive, particularly if they involve Wi-Fi, because all it takes is one bad storm here and anything that we're doing that's Wi-Fi based is kaput.
Well, but unfortunately, as Mark said, the intent was never to go down the health route
Correct.
because it's a rabbit hole and people
Hence
have
why we had
opinions
the meeting
about it, but
No,
now.
that actually wasn't, that wasn't the purpose today.
I
It
understand.
wasn't the purpose.
No, I understand, and I would like to hear what you guys had come up with and what your thoughts were, and I thought we still were gonna talk about that. And really, the whole purpose of all this time that we've spent over 2 years never talking about the health issues, and me bringing it up, and me bringing it up, and me seeing in my practice kids that are damaged by a lot of different things that are silent, that we don't know, and we're not aware of. You see it again and again. You see people turning off their Wi-Fi in their homes, their kids do better. You see kids being in environments that are high Wi-Fi and they stim and they have a hard time. And for me to have watched this and been silent, and other than my statements of just be aware, please think about the health effects, and feeling multiple times like I've been silenced, not necessarily so in a negative way, but you said we're not talking about the health effects right now, and I respected that. And then we decided we're gonna talk about the health effects. We're gonna talk about the safety issues. And to me, I thought it was very important that the community, at least some people, we only reached a very small amount of people, really. Those flyers did not go out to very many. I think we had 150 flyers that went out because we couldn't get our act together fast enough and we couldn't do it, and I broke my toe.
Can
I ask a question on those flyers?
Sure.
Why didn't that hit the newsletter a week before?
Because it wasn't put out by the village.
Because-
It wasn't put out by the village. It was.
Because a lot of the residents are
No.
not, and they skip.
So what happened really, so you understand, this has been something that I have been, this is, I feel why I'm on the council, right? Because this is what I'm here for, is to help protect the people, help to get people to notify and understand what's going on in the environment around them, and to be aware. And I understand that maybe you guys feel that it wasn't the best way to do it, and maybe it wasn't the best way to do it, but it was the way that the group of people talked and decided that that's how we were gonna do it, and we decided to do it non-inflammatory. And we only could put it out to the people that we had the means to do it. I broke my pinky toe, I couldn't walk, so we couldn't do it in advance. We didn't get our act together to get it, whatever the point is. We put it out to the people that we could reach, and we attempted to reach the people that were closest to where the cell towers were proposed, so that they could be aware of it themselves and be in advance.
Whoa.
No, I know, I understand. We didn't get it out to most of the population.
Let
We
us-
probably got it to a very small amount of people.
Let us back
But
up.
my point is, but let me just finish my own statement, is that the point is that with the minimum amount of people that we reached, to have this kind of turnout, to have however many people, what did we say, 80 people show up here today? To have that many people we only put out a very small amount of flyers. There's clearly something that we need to address.
No, we just need
hold
to
on, pause,
communicate back
pause.
what
Half
we've
of people
done.
were here because of the self-service, not.
Yes.
Or like,
Because
we
of
had
the
hands
health.
raised, right, we had hands raised, there were two people that didn't raise their hands.
No. There were a lot that
Vast majority
did.
raised their hands that they were concerned about
This is-
the health impact.
So I started the conversation.
Okay.
I'm allowed to finish.
Go ahead,
I'm
finish.
allowed to finish. So this is not the way.
I understand.
This is not the way
I
to make a
understand.
point. So, having some sort of communication to some number of people and some vague subjects, and then calling for people who happen to show up to raise their hand, it's not evidence, it's not data, it's not. So the whole point of this meeting,
It's not data,
the whole point,
are concerned.
the whole point today
Yes.
was for the subcommittee to educate the council what the technical results were. That was what it
I
is.
understand.
It was not meant to have a
I think I was
health forum.
afraid, I'll be honest, I think just number one, I think I was afraid that you guys weren't gonna do anything, and I don't know. I was afraid, and I felt like that before you even state what you're gonna do, if you were gonna say that you weren't gonna do enough, I wanted you to see what is out there in the community so that you could appreciate the intensity and the numbers that
The
were there.
voices
And
I heard were just as strong for people who want Bell Service.
there were two people that spoke against, the vast majority
Can we wrap
raised
this up?
their hands. I just wanted to.
No, I'm allowed to speak. I'm allowed to speak. Bill,
You can speak.
Bill.
Let's wrap it up, okay?
we're allowed to speak as long as we feel.
And I'm reserving my,
We
I
are.
have, I
You're
do
allowed
have
to speak
something
as long
I'm
as
gonna
you
add on
So we
top
are.
of this, but I'm gonna reserve
So-
it for my time.
So this is not the right way to make your point. So we're a democratic institution. We are. There's certainly been times I've raised subjects that failed. And there's times that other people raise subjects that have passed or failed I didn't agree with. That's how this forum operates. And when we call a special meeting to educate the rest of the committee about what we found, let's honor that and stick with that. If
It
you
was an
have
open
something to
meeting.
bring.
It was an open meeting. Anybody could show up. That's how we did the
what
water,
happened.
right? That's how we did the water. People could show up to speak if they
purpose
wanted to.
of
That was,
The purpose
I
of
didn't think
this
that many
meeting-
people would show up, honestly.
The purpose of the meeting was to educate the full council on what the subcommittee had found and why. And that was subverted, you know, to have healthcare forum, which I know you're passionate about, nothing wrong with that.
No,
But
those
that
cell
wa-
towers may go on your property.
I have no issue with that at all.
I understand. But a lot of people do.
But if you want to make a point for whatever you're passionate about, do it the right way. Ask for a vote, ask for a special counsel, ask for it at the church if you want to get that going. Do that. Don't go, you know, we have a democratic process here. Let's do that in the future, please. Thank you, I'm done.
All right, I'm gonna switch the order. Is everybody, I'm gonna go into my report. Again, I will lead off with, this conversation, which is the turnout, in my opinion, awesome. When we get people here within the building, well, you're probably not gonna agree with the second half of my statement. But the initial statement is, when we get people in this building and we get participation, it is a wonderful thing. So I don't have a problem getting people here. I don't have a problem being passionate about a topic that frankly we haven't talked a lot about. And if they want to voice their opinions, we need to create a forum to do it. What I have a problem with is twofold, which is, one, the village could have done the communication. And to my knowledge, you didn't reach out to Roger or to anyone else to try and facilitate that type of a conversation. So there was a particular reason you chose not to go to our village staff who's in charge of communications out to village residents. And then the second part of the conversation that I have a problem with is as I look at the flyer, there's no indicator of who's making this communication, right? So not only are you not allowing the village to control the narrative in inviting people into the village hall to have the conversation, you're not even saying, I, as one of the trustees speaking in my own capacity, have a very strong opinion about this, and so I'm trying to raise awareness. Like, by all means, I'm not always going to agree with the people on the council, and I have a very strong opinion with going out into the public and having conversations with them, but it's always my face, and it's always reflected as this is my opinion. I don't know if what I bring to the council is going to pass or not, but I'm being very transparent that I don't speak on behalf of the village. And when I look at this, what it's talking about is Franklin Open Forum. Plans are in place to add small cell towers. Not cell towers, they're nodes.
They're called small cell towers. That's the name. That's what they're called, small cell towers. That's the technical name. They're not
Okay.
nodes.
Also, this implies that we are significantly further along in this plan than we are. I think most of the people here are like, what are you talking about that they're about to erect these small cell towers within the community, right? Like, we are still at the stage where we're not voting on anything. We don't have a plan in place. We don't have commitments
just
from anybody.
applied for the,
Don't
yeah.
interrupt me, okay? This is
Okay.
my time.
All right.
All right. And then the last thing is that it says join us for an open discussion. If there is not a person who is sending this communication, us means the village. So it's implied that this message is coming out to the village, which is why I received communications from residents being like, what is going on? How are you guys so disorganized that you're only sending out a communication a couple of days ahead of time? To where I reached out to the village staff and I said, I don't disagree with, again, getting something out to the community about this being in place, and it should be on our village website. And they fortunately were very responsive, and I greatly appreciate that from the village staff to go out and post it so that at least when people get this, if they would have gone to our village website after receiving this, they would have saw nothing. And then who has that narrative? It's completely out of our hands at that point. You took the narrative into your own hands and you took it away from the village. And we have seen this stem from not only this communication, through the campaigns. Like, this is a reoccurring thing within our village, and we have to get better because all it's creating is discourse. It's not creating a better communication. This wasn't an organized forum earlier. It started out with a shouting match that we eventually, I tried to funnel it into public comment. Like, we are not prepared to satisfy the passions that were in the room, so please tell us what your concerns are so that we can actually respond to it. That is what we had to do because we were totally caught off guard by the situation. So please, all of us sitting up here, like, we have to stop playing political games and start doing what is best for the community. And that is topic one. Now on to better things. All right. The second topic is recognition of officers. It was great to have this today. I think I brought it up a couple of different times. I would love for a communication to go out to the village. That would be a summary of the recognitions that happened today and the awards that were received. If we could, I leave it to the village to kind of decide how they want to do it, but I think it would be great if we had a separate and apart email from this week and the next, just because I think it will get a little bit bogged down. And I totally understand that we don't want to spam the public with emails. I think this is, a special occasion that happens annually. So please consider doing that. And then finally, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge June as Pride Month and to support and celebrate LGBTQ community. I am continually committed to improve our community so that all may feel loved and accepted for who they are with pride and without reservation. So, thank you.
David.
So, I want to address something that was mentioned at legal, that the legal committee had asked me to address, but I would have addressed it anyways. So at our last council meeting during public comments, one of our esteemed planning commissioners, Stuart Wooters, made a comment that feedback had come back to the planning commission that the council was of the belief that the planning commission was overreaching in their actions or in their investigation and vetting and studying of ordinances, and I wanted to address that. I'm kind of surprised by that, the comment that was made at the planning commission meeting. The word overreaching has probably been stated at this council over the last 15 years once, and it was a couple meetings ago when we were discussing one particular ordinance and even one or two sections in a particular ordinance. And for the discussion to go back to the planning commission and the planning commission to now operate on the premise that they feel that we don't appreciate, or that we feel that what they're doing is overreaching or overbearing, to me is really upsetting, particularly having sat on planning commission for as long as I did. What the planning commission does in vetting out ordinances is as challenging as anything that we do. They have to take things from the ground. They have to figure out what residents would be thinking because the residents aren't there to tell them what they're thinking. And if in a particular ordinance having done it and having now sat here, I would much rather get an ordinance brought to us that had thought out everything possible and had as much crap in it that they thought might have been reasonable, and then have a dialogue on it, and if it needs to be pared back or relooked at, fine. But because and the ordinance in which it was discussed, the two ordinances that we're dealing with right now, the open burning and the lighting, which has great impact on people's daily individual lives and how they interact with their neighbors, is very challenging for the planning commission. And for them to have gone through the idea that we feel that they're overreaching and doing their job, and to have been offended by that offends me. And I wanted to make sure that they understand, and Pete, you're here, unfortunately not more of them are, but that they understand how much we appreciate what you guys do, and that I would never want you to second guess or think twice about a subject matter because you think we wouldn't want to hear about it. If we don't agree at the end of the day, and we're the ones that are the elected officials right now, then that may, so be it. But don't ever take it as if you guys are doing something that we don't appreciate.
Appreciate that, David.
I would agree, and the only point I would add is, planning commissioners, if you think there's something that is debatable, ask a question. We'll tell you what we think.
100%. That's Pete,
but-
that's your role,
but-
Pete, is
yeah.
during that, is when you feel there's a question that needs to come to us, ask us so that we can point you in the right direction.
Right, right,
That's all I
but
have to say.
keep rolling. I totally agree with, yep. Any other comments about that? Are we in sync on,
Definitely.
okay,
Well said, David.
okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for those comments, okay. Any other council members with reports? Okay, let's move on. Roger Frazier, administrative report.
Just a couple things I'd mention. One is that Dana's not with us today. She was involved in an auto accident over the weekend.
Shoot.
She's apparently not seriously hurt, but she's without transportation. She's had some back issues anyway, and I think that may have been aggravated a little bit. And to make matters more difficult for us in the office is that she was already planning to be at a clerk's conference in Detroit this week, which takes up the rest of the week. So we're sort of scrambling to get all of this stuff put together. And we're each doing some of the things that we don't ordinarily do in order to get all this done. So I don't have any additional report as a consequence of that, and preparing two different budget items and a few other things for you guys. So please accept that.
Is she going to be out for a while?
I think that, well, she's going to be gone the rest of the week anyway. That was already planned. And we expect her back.
But as far as health-wise, she's,
We think she'll be fine.
in transportation, does she not have?
Well, she's got to get her car repaired, and she's got to get a replacement, and that was all stuff that she couldn't do over the weekend. So
Right.
she was trying to do that, plus she had a doctor's appointment today, and it's been.
She's okay, I talked
All right, well, give her our best.
Yeah.
I mean, assume her auto insurance provides a loaner car.
Can we not get into the details of
Yeah.
people's personal matters?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, we wish her the
point is
best.
that She's
Yeah.
not with us, and we're
Good.
wishing
Okay.
her the best, and we're
Cool.
doing what we can to help her.
Okay. All right, Peter, Planning Commission.
So, good evening. Got one significant thing really of note that we've been working on is our public and institutional zoning ordinance. And this started, little background, back in July of '21, we created an ordinance which creates a new district, the Public and Institutional District. It was mentioned in our master plan, but we didn't have an ordinance defining what this district was. So we did that back in July of '21. And then the council requested in the resolution that we review the P&I designation as it would apply to the village-owned properties. We did that. We've had a couple of lengthy discussions on it. Right now, there's about 12 village-owned properties that this would apply to, and including, the church, the Huda School, and the Village Green. Right now, the various properties have different zonings on them, but some of them are zoned residential. One of the things this would do is it would offer another level of protection that houses don't be built on them. There are many levels of protection preventing that from happening, but this would be another one. And it would also bring the properties in line with their actual current usages. I think the library would be a good example of one, the fire department as well, where they are essentially public and institutional now, but since we don't have that designation, they're not referred to that way. So that has, there is a memo prepared by Chris. I'm not sure if you guys get these memos, but they're really the thing to read and look at. They outline it very well. Essentially, our recommendation at this point is that we proceed with changing these zoning designations. It can be significant for the property owners. The exact impact that it will have on them, is it's unclear how they would feel about it, and but our planner advises us that it's well within our right to do this, and we feel it's in the best interest of the village. And we do have one more item that I do want to bring up, if there's no questions on that. Yeah.
Quick thing, we did not receive or at least I didn't receive the memo from Chris. If we could, that'd be great.
Well, typically those are prepared for the planning commission.
Okay.
And typically, when the item comes to you, the background material that would have been prepared would have come to you as well, and it has not yet come to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Say that again, right? Good, go ahead.
Well, Chris wrote in response to questions that the planning commission had about the P&I ordinance.
Right.
And how it applies.
Mm-hmm.
And all I said was that was directed in response to questions from the planning commission, and as part of your deliberation, when you make a subsequent recommendation to the council, the material that you got from Chris would have been included in that material that went subsequently to the council as well.
Okay. So, I guess, the letters are addressed to the council, dear council members. And we've had our public hearing, and I'm prepared to bring that to you now. So how you proceed with it is in your hands. I think it's.
So you got a public hearing on what?
On P&I ordinance.
Yeah, the resolution.
The ordinance is already in place.
The ordinance, well, this would be rezoning.
The designation, or the
So this was
rezoning.
the beginning of the rezoning process, you're
Yep.
saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the planning commission made a recommendation on, or you had a public hearing on the properties that you suggest should be rezoned.
Right, that's right.
And you've had the public hearing?
Right. There were no comments or attendees.
Were notice given to all the property owners that are gonna be impacted?
You know, I believe that's standard operating procedure.
When it goes back to
Rick
the
is saying
council,
no.
Rick's saying no, I'm guessing the library did not.
when it goes back to the planning commission, I'm sorry, to the council, and for your consideration, it would be part of the process that I would recommend that every one of the property owners be notified before it gets in your hands.
Yes.
It shouldn't be for before the public hearing.
Well, they had a public hearing, it's part of the planning commission process, and I'm suggesting that you probably are going to want to have a public hearing as a council as well.
Yeah.
Can do that.
But
Good.
you still also want to notify, make sure each one of the property owners is notified that that property is being considered for rezoning.
And what is the extent of notification? Is it just a letter in the mail? Is it actually we need to get in contact with them to
You know,
make
we
sure
haven't
that they?
done that since I've been here, so
Right.
there's a certain amount of creativity that needs
Right.
to be exercised.
I think a letter in the mail is all.
letters out.
Yeah.
And that's what
Generally,
I'm
we
just
do.
wondering if somebody
So-
doesn't see it and then they
so-
see it after the fact and then.
What was the planning commission, like, I haven't seen, what were all the properties that was it all of them that are master, so everything that's master
the-
plan,
Right.
you're recommending to be
With-
rezoned?
With the exception of the post office, leaving it as a commercial designation.
And with
But
the
yes, all the significant properties, in the ones that are identified in our master plan now as the green, public and institutional. And we added a couple. We added Bowden Lane property, residential, needless to say.
The other exception was half of the fire department, the part that was residential, I think.
Right, right.
Okay.
So, yep, any more questions on that? If not, the only other thing is our master plan is still out there. I don't know if that's getting ready. Peter, do you know if that has made its way out of your?
No, it is supposed to be referred to a subcommittee. I don't know that we nominated that subcommittee yet.
Okay.
A subcommittee of what?
Of the council.
Okay.
To review it.
Is it something I would like to see before we consider it? And I don't know if all of you guys feel the same way.
I will nominate Pam in her
Subcommittee would
absence.
do? Isn't that the point of the subcommittee, to take what the planning commission put together and review it?
Pretty much.
Seems fair, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot to review.
Subcommittee.
You know, there were not a lot of changes.
You're on the subcommittee,
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
if you want to get the first blush.
There's also a number of state rules related to the distribution of a master plan update
Okay.
to our neighbors and to allow them the opportunity to see what is
Right.
being proposed and get
Right.
comments back.
So Peter, the subcommittee, you're saying required by, is it a legal thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
I have an email indicating, I mean, we've been bouncing around, but I have an
Oh,
email
okay.
saying that it should be sent to a subcommittee so they can
It's
review.
nothing that has to be.
Correct.
by law. Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Is there a Main Street Franklin report?
Yeah, I don't know. So, the only thing I can say is, I don't know, did we already present the information about David?
Yeah.
David's departure? We did that last month? Okay, and then Susan is the interim Main Street administrator, and I don't have anything unless you have. Okay.
We've, I know I've been a critic of Main Street, and I've,
Really?
and I just would like us to sit down and start at square one and say, are we doing the right thing? You know, we've been doing this for 12 years, and we keep getting the same result. Is there something we should be doing
It's kind of
different?
like Gen Stan, it sort of keeps coming back, you know, I mean, I think we were doing great things.
Yeah, real
and I
quick.
think we are doing
I
great.
do want to highlight one thing. We have, and you all have a better recollection of the full past than I do, but it came up in a discussion of the Main Street Franklin board that we haven't been doing the same thing for 12 years, and we just recently started putting an actual emphasis on Main Street, and it was appreciated by not only our businesses, but also Oakland County as well, in recognition of all the good work that we've done and the organization and coordination that has occurred. So have we ran into issues? Yes, we absolutely have. I think we honestly need to look ourselves in the mirror on that one as to what we could have done better in either of the situations. But I think to say that we're not improving the situation or we're doing the same thing that we've been doing for the past 12 years is really undercutting the efforts of a lot of people.
I recall with Clarity, when we hired Megan, you asked specifically for hard metrics. And I do remember with Clarity, Megan reporting out each one of those she delivered upon. So she met our expectations. You asked for hard things, you, Bill, you'd ask for things, and she responded and she met those.
One Main Street director did. I
Okay,
acknowledge
well,
that.
unfortunately,
But,
without.
so it's not the same thing. We laid
That's
out hard
fine.
metrics and she delivered. So it can be done.
And-
My measurement has always been, how many new businesses we attracted, how many more places do we have that are good places to have a business? In my view, neither of those have changed much.
Every metric you asked, she delivered upon.
Unfortunately,
here. She went through it.
we're revisiting old news. We lost Megan.
Right,
We don't need to recount why we lost Megan.
I agree.
I'm sure you
I'm
do.
just, yeah.
But the reality is she was an absolute perfect fit for Main Street. Everyone loved her. The administrator here loved her. If we could get her back in a heartbeat, we would do so. We replaced her after months of searching, and unfortunately, it was a very poor fit. And he did not deliver in the very short period that he was with us, and caused a lot of controversy and a discomfort among the staff here. So that was an abrupt and very disappointing turnaround. And trying to find people to fill these kinds of positions right now is very challenging. So Susan has stepped up to help. She has a good understanding of what is needed, but she can only address a part-time situation. We will replace that position with a full-time person. This was the first time we actually committed significantly to a full-time administrator of Main Street, and the community appreciated it. The retail community appreciated it greatly. And the events that we had were highly successful and drove a lot of traffic into our little downtown.
They have been
So,
successful,
Okay.
right? The
There
block party
is-
absolutely has
There
been
is
successful
potential
sure.
for greatness.
Then let's go, okay.
But we
I'm-
just
I'm
got
good.
it, and we just
We're
have
having a
to,
block party right now.
Right.
We're planning that as we speak, so.
we
we're
have to
having several
stay,
meetings on that.
we have to stay the course and not use these hiccups as excuse to revisit what we've already visited several times.
Instead of revisiting, the only thing is, what else can we do?
Well,
How else can
we're
we
trying
think
to find-
outside the box?
If we could find a Megan in a
But
heart.
other than that, even other than that, what else can we do?
Yeah. So just to kind of rehash, I guess, some of the updates is we had a really good conversation, recently where we're actually gonna bring in a Main Street director from another community, of a very similar community, to kind of talk about what are the things that have worked, what are the things that don't work, what are the personality traits that this person thinks has made them successful, things that we can do as council to better facilitate the needs of the businesses and the Main Street director. So really trying to look at it more holistically and not just jump both feet in and say, we have all the answers, let's march forward, so.
But again, and this is a great example,
Council meeting and
Yep.
stuff.
this is a great example of what we could do if we wanted to amp this up, we would ask for all of our retail owners to come before us and tell us how they feel. Because they feel very strongly that this is an important tool, and we have to continue to follow the path that we've set out.
Mike, I didn't say that it was not important. I said maybe there are other things that we're not doing that would have a result. And I don't know what those are. But I
How do we
think
get the
at some
houses
point in
cleaned up?
time.
How
But you
we
do
get
start the
house
conversation by
cleaned up?
saying, you know, I haven't
Let's move
been
on.
We should
supportive
move on.
of Main
Well,
Street
and I-
in the
Let's move on.
but that's-
Let's move on.
Is that
Let's
not a
move on.
fact? Yeah. So, okay.
Let's move on.
Okay, enough said. So,
Okay.
all right. Salary Service Subcommittee report. I think the issue is, let's schedule a public meeting sometime.
We'll work on a date in the next 4 weeks.
Okay.
To set up a meeting.
So now I'm gonna ask the question though, before we have a meeting, are we gonna be able to all know what the plans are, or is that gonna be presented at the meeting?
Let's make an agenda for the meeting.
Well, why don't we get our subcommittee together next week and let's set an agenda for the meeting? And what do you want to talk about? Do you want to do that?
That's perfect.
Okay.
But will we know ahead of that
Yes,
meeting as on
yes.
the board, or?
You will have the agenda also. Yes.
Okay, I just would like to know what you have to say. I'd like to know what the end result, what you, your conclusion that you come to, or is it not a conclusion? Are you just working on this, or some thoughts, these are options that we have, like how?
Bill asked, let's sit down as subcommittee, make an agenda. I agreed.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
okay?
Bill,
Yes, sir.
could I ask for a timeout?
Sure.
I need to take a walk before. we
Okay,
start on the next
we'll take a
program.
2-minute break. Okay.
How about those Tigers?
Are they doing well?
Hell no. I'm going to.
I didn't think they would, but, you know.
That's usually what
Would you tell us a little bit about the T-Mobile app and what's going on there? This is cell phone service.
Yes. An entity called Extenet filed a right-of-way application that was forwarded to me. They're seeking to install a new utility pole at Woodside Drive and 13 Mile. They've submitted engineering application. I took a look at it, and to my lay person's perspective, it looked fine. I'd refer to engineering or building to see if it complies with the application, but nonetheless, Michigan has adopted the Small Cell Wireless Act, and it favors these wireless providers. It basically states, so long as the application complies with state law, that you have to approve. Now, you could propose a different location, so long as it's 75 feet within where they're requesting, if there's a new utility pole. So both our ordinance and the Small Cell Act favor co-location of cell equipment. I spoke to Bill Dinnan, and he's taking a look to see if we have something within the vicinity of 75 feet. However, if we do say, we propose a different location, the wireless providers have basically veto power. I think the technical term is if it doesn't meet their reasonable technical requirements, that they could say, no, we insist on this new location. The engineering diagrams show that the pole is 50 feet, 10 feet would be below ground, 40 feet would be above ground, and their cell equipment would be 5 feet above that, so it does comply with the state law. I looked at our ordinance and it's dated. The Small Cell Wireless Act was enacted, adopted in 2018. I saw that our ordinance was 2014, so if we wanted to enforce our ordinance, it would likely be in violate of state law. So that would probably need to be looked at. There's a shot clock, so long as the application is complete, we get 25 days to say yes or no, and I think it's about 90 days to approve it. So they proposed, I had Woodside and 13 Mile. I took a look at it before the meeting, and it is on the south side, because Woodside runs north and south. There's a Woodside north of 13 Mile, there's a Woodside south of 13 Mile. I figure, go ahead.
So it sounds like we are very hamstrung in terms of our options.
Yes, it favors, no question.
And it's in like the 13 Mile Road right away?
That is my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we were to make resolutions to say it needed to be 10 feet taller, for example, are we able to do that?
Not if it runs afoul of state law. I
But
think
Extenet is willing to work with us and put these things on higher poles and set them in a place that's at least 150 feet from a house. So they're voluntarily gonna want to do that and work with us on that.
In my
So I think those are
experience.
two big potential answers to the safety question, plus a higher transmitter.
The company that is filing the application, what's the name of the company?
Extenet, EXTENET Systems.
They provide the system for
Yeah,
T-Mobile.
okay, I just want to make sure we're
Okay.
talking the same thing.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yeah.
So they filed a application to the letter of law,
Right.
and that's going to proceed based on the timing. We could have a separate meeting requesting something else, I guess, if they so choose.
So some of just knowing some of the other ideas there that, do we have any, I mean, if we had a resolution, if we had some requirements that were in addition to that, for example, a notification of the properties that are nearby and give them a certain period of time so that they can be aware of that this is gonna be going in on their property, they should know. Because if they have a sensitive person, right, if they need to know, do I need to move? Do I need to paint the house? Is it a special Faraday paint? Do I need to do anything, put up special window treatments to protect my family? Do I need to, is there any way that they can fight? I think people need to know. There are, 1 in 100 people are electrosensitive.
That would be within council's purview to go ahead and prepare an ordinance. For this, we're a little late to the game, but if you guys so decide, you guys can head down that route.
That's my point. We're late in the game.
Getting a response.
So they submitted May 22nd. We have 25 days to say whether their application is complete or not. And then I think it's 90 days to approve or not approve.
I see.
In my experience, like Bill has experienced, they're pretty reasonable working with you despite having a lot of leverage on their side to say, no, we're going to leave it there. They have state law behind.
Yeah, sorry, to your point, so under the law, even if we pass, what do we have a right to restrict from an ordinance perspective? Where, again, we can pass whatever ordinance we want, but what is actually superseded? Like, what do we control?
It basically states you can propose a different co-location, as state law suggests.
Right.
But they have the ultimate.
Then they can say no.
Yeah, but then there's technical state law aspects where if it obstructs traffic or other factors that may not apply in this case.
Right.
Or in many cases.
But as we saw that there are other states and other cities and other states, I should say, that are making these ordinances in many different states. I
No,
mean,
I
in cities.
understand, Kathy. The reason I was asking the question that I have is we have to look specific to Michigan state law, right? Like, California is obviously gonna provide significantly more protections.
Well, you're
related
saying
to
this is a Michigan state, not a federal law? I
Right.
thought it was federal.
It's both.
He mentioned Michigan.
Yeah.
Both, but
And he
Michigan.
started talking.
Right.
Can we ask X, whatever the company is, are there any other things that they can do?
What do you
That-
want them to do, I guess?
I don't, so I'm
Let's-
asking you if you can ask them if they.
Sure, tell me what
else?
you
Is there
want.
anything else that they can do to appease us, to make it better? Can they make it even taller? Can they, I mean, some of these places are doing testing.
Again, Kathy,
I'm just trying.
No, believe me,
I'm trying
trying to translate, right?
Okay.
I'm not trying to impede what you're doing. What Bill is trying to suggest is like, provide direction for Bill to be able to go to them, because if we just go to them with, what else can you do within the short time frame that we turn around, like,
Yes.
you're gonna miss your negotiating window by just throwing it back to them. We need, that again goes back to the, appreciate everybody who shows up. You all seem far more informed than I. Lay out the facts, right? Creating a report, something that Bill and the subcommittee can tangibly take back and try.
The problem is, like you said, we're behind the game. All of a sudden, this gets filed and this gets done. We've been talking about this for 2 years. This is why I felt this urgency to get this message out there, because we're not talking about this. And I keep asking to talk about it, and I keep being told, we can't talk about it. We're not talking about it, and so this is why.
We're talking about it.
I got it. So the point is that we're behind the game. I don't know what can be done in Michigan. I'm not there. I don't know. We gotta figure it out. And how do we figure it out?
Okay, so we have 90 days to
We have
respond.
25 days.
Is that right?
You're both right. 25 days to show whether the application they submit is complete, and then
Yeah.
90 days.
Then 90 days after that.
Is there an
All right, so-
opportunity for an extension?
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's,
Again,
I
I
prefer maybe we
think-
go into closed session to discuss strategy, but, yeah, there's applications may not be complete.
Well, no, I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna go down that route, right? So, a lot of contracts say, automatic renewal, or not automatic renewal, opportunity for an extension, blah, blah, blah. So,
Again, in my experience, and I think Bill's experiencing the same thing, they're very reasonable to come back and say, yes, we'll give you additional time, and I can write a response saying, hey, thank you for allowing us the time. We'll hold up, you probably won't get there, but.
Was there a reason, just out of curiosity, that Woodside was picked? Because no one's complaining about cell service there, where tons of people are complaining about it in Colony Hill. So why wouldn't we focus on Colony Hill as the first one? Because
Will you
they're the
stop
ones who
saying
want it.
we?
They
We
made,
don't have anything to do with it,
right,
Kathy.
they made the
But
decision.
we've gone out and asked for this.
No,
what
we
they
haven't
did-
done anything.
Right.
We
as far
have
as-
gone
No,
out
we've
and asked
not.
for that.
We've not, we've said improve your service.
Okay, so.
Here's our,
okay.
here's our assessment of
Okay.
your service.
Okay.
And improve it. That's all we've said. They, based on their own data, have come back and said, we need 8 more transmitters in the Franklin area. 5 of those are not, they're in road right of way that doesn't belong to Franklin. 3 of them are in Franklin. The submission of this particular application was a surprise to me. I didn't realize they were gonna do that yet, but that's okay.
I see.
We,
And they might actually be applying to the ones in Farmington Hills already too, for
Yeah.
all we know,
Right.
because those aren't in our
It's
right
not
of
our-
way.
Yeah.
I got it.
One would presume that their locations are based upon topography.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear you.
and you look at the
Higher
map and you can
spots.
see, yeah.
And they're picking high spots in the public right of way because they specifically know, even though they probably can, that they're not gonna go start going in people's backyards
Right.
and putting these on telephone
Even
poles
though-
in people's backyard. That's why they're picking the poles
Except
on
for
the main
Irving.
roads where hopefully houses are set farther back off of them because the right of way is bigger. And
No, you're right, it's
They-
150,
they-
so it's
they
150
are
from one house and 200
identifying
from another
locations.
house. So it isn't as close in that area. But my bigger concern of all the locations is the Irving, because it is in people's
Again, that
backyards.
may, we don't know what that exact location is, Kathy. That was just a dot on a map.
Okay.
So they're gonna come back to us with a specific location when, and I guess we can
yeah,
go to
they
them and
theoretically
say.
have two on 13 Mile Road, but have only pulled a permit for one of them.
Exactly, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So as soon as we know on, or, I don't even know, maybe it's Wellington in the map, in
I see what
the
you're
dots
saying. It
off.
looked like it's on the
It
pathway
it
where it
does,
looks
but,
like,
but I think you have to look at the topography map, which makes a lot of sense, that you put it on the highest spot. You can put it. And you can see along 13 Mile, there's a couple high spots, and that's what they're targeting, so. Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the application is filed. Now we need to react to it
so
and
it does seem like we have a limited period of time to get a community together. Like someone made a comment within the next month, like it would make sense, it would behoove us to do it soon.
well, we have a process for notifying our residents. Can't we send a notice out, Franklin, that, hey, we got this application, it's within 1,000 feet of your house?
Special meeting?
We can do that. We can identify the
Yeah.
areas, the properties that are.
So why don't we do that on the Woodside 13?
Let me throw you another curve. The applicant has also filed a permit application with the road commission, assuming that the right-of-way that they're needing to use is controlled by the road commission.
Okay?
And then the question is whether or not, in that circumstance, we have any right to have a say
Right.
in terms of their application.
But that's where we've got them willing to work with us voluntarily. Let's use that.
Well, the other part of this is that the guy who's representing Extenet or whatever.
Extenet, yeah.
Excellent, yeah.
Was trying to rip a new one for Bill today, because he says they're planning to proceed with the road commission without having to deal with the village.
Now, that's news to me, but let's sit down and talk tomorrow, and I'll get my contact involved, and let's figure out what we gotta do to stay.
So they're gonna be cooperative to a point, and then they're gonna go their own way.
Well, and I think there is a point where they're gonna say, your demand is too, yeah. But so far,
bet-
then,
better for us not to amplify that until we know, because all we're doing is causing controversy that we shouldn't have done in the first place.
Right.
We're creating
No,
a
if
fear.
you don't notify the public that this is coming,
honey,
that's the worst situation. It's
if-
the worst situation, is to have it
Kathy,
thrown in there without.
We don't advocate for that, but if it is out of our control,
People still need to know.
there's little we can do about it, and
Doesn't
to
matter.
incite a
They
riot
still-
does not make
that
sense.
people need to know that we have nothing to do with it then too.
Right.
Then
That
it's
I
our
agree.
job to communicate
and we will
that.
cover that
Really
in
important.
our,
Yes.
in our, okay. Okay,
We
enough
should
said.
find that out and see how far we are able to go before we schedule a big public open meeting where we're just gonna get beat up.
No, I think we
No,
know
if
how far we can go so far.
have nothing to do, then there's nothing we can do about it.
They're still gonna yell at us?
They're gonna share their opinions and their frustration and their fears, and they're gonna look to us and our guidance to to do our jobs as best we can.
And
That's
some-
all we can do.
Everybody is not gonna be happy. It just isn't gonna work.
We know that.
But we'll do our best
Right, right,
to,
right,
to,
right. Okay.
to get a good wireless communications that's as safe as possible.
Right.
We mentioned to them in response to their concern that council was going to be talking about this tonight. And I think it would be appropriate and timely for you to have a conversation with this gentleman
Okay,
tomorrow or the
Okay.
day after.
I'd be glad to do
And
that.
follow up and see where they are.
And have them watch the first half hour of the meeting and see what.
I guess I'm with David on that one. I was pleased to see the audience out here, and hey.
No, we all
you-
appreciate
yeah.
having our community come forward and
Right.
participating. But when we amplify a situation without having a solution or preparation, that's not
We
helpful.
don't have a solution.
We
We're never-
do
we're
have
not- it
we
doesn't
do
sound-
have a solution, we just haven't communicated it as good as we should.
All right.
Okay, let's move on.
Agenda.
We have a proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24 in your packet under old business.
This was the follow-up to the introduction of the budget to you on May 8th. We had a workshop on the 15th, and we've had input from members of council. All of the things that seem to be generally, I can't say agreed to because this was an official meeting, but the stuff that seemed to be priorities in the conversation are reflected in the backup material, and they're also included in the actual budget document that is in front of you. So there is a resolution that's attached to this that would, if you so choose to move ahead, you could adopt that resolution. That is the first page in that set.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution to adopt fiscal year 2023-24 annual operating budget.
I will second.
We have discussion, right?
Questions? Yeah, discussion?
Yeah, an initial discussion, just, following up from, where we landed with last year. What was sorry that I wasn't sure if Chief Roberts was gonna be here. One of the questions that I had was, I believe that there was a significant amount that was in the last meeting that the police budget had come under. And I'm wondering kind of where that end balance is, because my understanding is that that then rolls into our general fund for anything that's left.
It rolls into his account for the stuff that's left in his account. We don't get that back in the general fund. That was the direction that we received from council as we were talking about this stuff, that their expectation was.
$25,000.
That's about it, I think.
Right.
Do we know how much spending happened in that last month then?
That's the key question. We don't know that yet.
We have another,
Yeah.
so,
So on that, can we have that answer for next meeting? How much was spent in the last one?
we'll have it for you before then, but
Thank you.
we'll send something out after we get this calculation done. The difficulty we have is that all of our spending report is not complete until we get into the next month. So,
But in theory, once we have that, we could always amend the budget.
and indeed you can, for the coming year.
Right.
Once we get past July 1, we may not further amend the last year's budget.
Oh, right, I'm talking about moving forward. If we find data from last year that would change our thoughts on the budget that we're approving
Yes.
right now,
That's
we
correct.
could tweak it, just like we tweak it when we run over
Exactly.
and under, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Agreed.
But there is, I'll just remind you that there is an item here to amend the current year's budget as a part of this agenda as well.
Right.
But we believe that this is reflective of the things that council asked us to include. We believe it's a responsible budget. It reflects the additional $340,000+ that was made available as a result of the
Millage.
override on Headley. And there are a couple of other things that we have done in this process to try to minimize the amount of money that is going out of the general fund into our office services, for a specific example. You've noticed, and some of you have observed, particularly that there's a large fund balance in the building fund. But one of the things that we have not done as a matter of practice is charge other staff time who works on building stuff against the building department. So we made some adjustments actually in this current budget cycle to reflect that, and that's also now reflected in next year's budget so that it cuts down some on what our general fund expense is for office services.
Good.
Did you
Can I
get
ask
all
some
your questions answered,
Yeah,
David? You can come back
I got a
later.
question. I have a question. We had talked about putting the $20,000 aside for emergency tree cutting and things like that,
Yes.
right? So my feeling, I'm not opposed to it, but I think that it's gonna require a lot of discussion as to how do we decide to use that money? Because you're saying this, I probably should ask, my question should be, what is that $20,000 to be used for? Maybe I should ask that
For
first.
emergencies.
But for emergencies on the roadways, emergencies on people's properties, like what's the, because we had talked, just explain.
Well, you have some choices that you can make with respect to that. The general public policy is that we spend the tax money on work that needs to be done on publicly held lands,
Okay.
and not on lands of private individuals.
Okay.
Now, there's exceptions to that. If, for example, and we had some of this, a tree that was in the right-of-way falls on somebody's yard, we'll clean that up. We did that just over here on Normandy. And that stuff happens.
Right.
But what I got out of the conversation about the 20,000 was that you wanted to have more money available for us to be able to take on some of these special projects that may come as a consequence of a weather event. But we did not talk about specific how-to
Right.
with respect to that, and it's worth having some time about that. And we can get there with some conversation with you about the kinds of things that you're imagining that you'd like to see covered.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing for some clarity. I don't think it has anything to do, I was the one that made the motion earlier about, hey, you know, we have a lot of residents that have a lot of debris on their property. First of all, 20,000 wouldn't get close to covering that.
Right, and then-
It was in response to the fact that we had to amend the budget to change this line item so significantly this year. So if you look at like, even this last budget or, bill statement that we just approved, like, the amount of damage that we sustained was not budgeted for, and so we're trying to compensate and get ahead of some of that with this planning. To say, we're not going to look at our budget at the end of the year and say, oh, we're 20,000 over where we thought we were, you're being responsible and saying, let's hedge early and then figure out where we can cut costs otherwise to be a little bit more responsible. That was how I interpreted it. Sure.
But there's 50,000 put in, not 20,000.
Sorry, 50, it is 50, yeah.
So, yeah, so.
That's a lot of money,
If we-
folks.
If we could, you sent around a budget highlights
Yep.
memo?
Yeah.
It's in your packet, I think.
Right, so I just want to see, so you said 50,000 included for emergency storm cleanup. I didn't see it, I wanted to see what that was.
It's in
It
this
is.
90,000.
Yeah, it's that
That's where the
90,000.
90 is, so that we bumped
It's
that
the
up.
40 plus 50 is 90.
Yeah, so when I
Yeah.
went through this, I just kind of
Okay, good. So
reconciled
I-
where the high items.
I did see the 25,000, it looked like for cell service, you had allocated some, I saw that. I see in here 50,000 for sidewalks on 13 Mile, I'm sorry, was that in engineering services? Okay.
Can we talk about that just a second?
Yeah.
Because to me, we're putting the cart before the horse here. You know, this is a $4 million project according to HRC. Shouldn't we make sure that a special millage passes before we start investing in it?
That $4 million quote you have is an option. There are other options out there. I support leaving this as is. I'm not interested in doing a millage vote yet, frankly.
Well, may I?
Sure.
The 4 million covers, I think, both Franklin Road South and 13 Mile. But the 50,000 is my use of HRC to chase grant funds. And they have to put together special reports to cover those kinds of things. And there are, particularly in SEMCOG and other places, 6 figures in available grant funds that I believe we should be chasing after. And we don't have the resources here to do that. They have all the
Okay.
numbers. And that's what I intended as the principal issue. There may be some additional engineering that we have to do in a particular question, but
When we
So it's
had
50
this conversation
Yep.
about putting this in there, we wanted to make sure we showed to our residents that care passionately about this, that we're listening to them. So you absolutely, you were in the room with us, with Pam and I, and Roger here at this table and said, we need to make sure we start addressing it and put some more funding into it. That's where the $50,000 came into. So you make the first step, and if that's the prudent use of the funds to find that funding, that's fantastic.
So
we approve this.
50,000 to find 6 figures worth of
Well,
grant money.
Yeah, so.
If
so-
we choose to use
If
it.
we-
That's what
if
it's
we
gonna be
choose-
used for,
But-
fine,
But
right.
you're second guessing
We're
this
not
now. We
spending
had
it
this
yet.
conversation. You agreed to this.
I didn't, it looked to me, I didn't know what the 50 grand was gonna be used for. We didn't talk about grants. That's great, I'm supportive of that. Spend
That's-
some money to go look for money.
Okay.
No,
But if
no.
we're spending that 50 grand to start engineering the sidewalks, which we don't know how to pay for,
no, I don't think
that doesn't make any sense.
No,
I don't think that's the
it's
intent.
absolutely not.
Right, okay,
We don't know where to put them yet.
right.
There for the Department 101 Village Council miscellaneous council expenses, our budget's going up from 3,800 to 17,500. And what is that related to?
Susan, I need
For
your
the
help.
miscellaneous council?
Yeah.
Since that was the 2,500 for the summer block party that we usually
Okay.
make. And
Gotcha.
then we decided 15 grand to buy centennial. And the
Okay,
others
that's
just
where
kind of
that's being
miscellaneous
planned out of.
things.
All right. Thank you.
So, one last thing, so on your memo, it talked about stormwater and removing 100,000 from the groundwater studies. Did that actually come out? Are we not
We were
allocating?
gonna put the 100 grand in there, but we didn't put it in there this time. We can always amend it later.
No, well, because it seemed like
No, I
from
didn't.
what that, what the Eagle person said, it seems like Eagle's kind of taking the lead
Right.
on
That was mine.
the situation at the strip center, so
The plaza.
I don't think we should be
and
spending
issues
money
and
on
all of
it.
that is still in Eagles' hands.
okay, good.
And there's still money coming from the state to help us with that. How long that lasts, we're not optimistic. But our intent is to continue to work on that. And if we can, find a way to get that stuff out of the ground so that there's not future contamination issues.
Right, and they're installing systems to attempt to do that.
But there's also still some materials left under there. The tanks that had been used to store this stuff were crushed but not removed. And there's some other cleanup stuff that they may, for prolonged use, recommend getting removed from there.
If the money runs out with the Eagle and the Eagle stops doing it, then it's left in our hands.
And again, there's a dozen different ways that that could shake out.
Right.
And so we didn't put a whole bunch of money in there, figuring that if we come up with something that you guys might be interested in, we'll talk to you about putting some more money in.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm in agreement in taking it out, I'm not asking to put it back in.
Yeah. So I have just kind of a process question, which is related to the finance committee in preparing this, so I guess it's also for council members as well, which is, as I was going through the items, I was kind of looking at the adjustments for where do we see a high spike in something that we were planning for, and compared to the day-to-day, and it's like, well, what am I gonna do, cut 2,000 here, there, is it actually making a difference? Because the way that I was approaching it was more in the mentality of, again, we asked for the Headley override for the opportunity to catch a breath, right? Not for a flotation device, because it's not permanent. And so my question when I look at this budget is, are we just taking a breath, or are we taking a breath with the intention that there's gonna be a flotation device, right? Because we're not coming out with such, if we didn't have the Headley override, we would be operating in the negative, withdrawing from the general fund. And so, we're at this point where we need to approve this budget, but that means we have 2 years left to figure this out, right? And so I'm just wondering, is our intent that we're going to need to, because we either need to get new sources of revenue or increase taxes or significantly cut. There's 3 options that we have. And so I think we really as a council need to hone in on what is our strategy for post Headley override.
Well, remember, we originally were going to ask for more than just this Headley override. We had 2 that we were gonna combine.
Right.
And we couldn't by virtue of a legal requirement.
David, you asked how a process for the financial committee.
Yeah.
So I'll share a little bit about how I went through.
Thank you.
Roger and the accounting team sat down at long length, going through various options. We absolutely did not want to do just a thing where you'd be, using your, metaphor, get our head above water for a year and have to go back again, looking like we cannot manage our finances. So that's how those numbers got proposed in the first place. Right now, I think we've got enough breathing room. The real risk we have for long-term budget and financial health deals with our police budgets. Our police budgets right now occupy 100% of our property taxes, 100%. There's $0 left over for all the other things we think are important in the village. That's one thing needs to be tackled. We have a lot of conversation with Chief Dan. You'll see some of it here about how we're compensated by Bingham Farms. That's part of that conversation. But that's the real risk. That's not been answered. That should be taken, that's obviously a big conversation to have offline, but that's the biggest risk. That line of expenses is growing faster than our line of revenues. So we've bought ourselves breathing room for a reasonable amount of time to tackle that.
So let me say one thing in relation to that. Also in this agenda for tonight is a request that you approve our applying for grant monies from the state to bring us up to 60% funding for pensions.
Yes, the 346.
And that's worth a couple $100,000, which will also mitigate against some of our costs going into the next year. So there are a few pieces like that that we hope to keep tagging after to make it more of a flotation device than that's usable for a long time.
Yeah, because to your point, if we're looking at the cost of like the police budget, for instance, are we looking at additionally how we're doing an analysis of how we compare to other communities?
Yes.
For instance, I think doesn't Bloomfield Hills charge a separate millage for their police force? That's not
So
rolled in.
there are opportunities
Yep.
that is worthy to have a long conversation outside this. What can we do? How can we change the police operators? If you recall, Chief Dan Roberts, his budget request this year was significantly higher than the biggest thing. He was somewhat sheepish about asking for that much more money. So this is the biggest thing. If we want to tackle it effectively, that's what we've got to tackle.
We have a police millage, a 1 mil, I think it is, dedicated to police.
It's 0.3, I think, Bill.
Is it? Okay, then it's $100,000. Okay, yep, okay.
But I think, yeah, and again, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of Bloomfield Hills is that it's a significant portion of.
All I'm saying is we
Well,
have, we could.
that kind of tax-
No, I appreciate that.
So that kind of tax increase, that's typically easier to do than other things, but still it's tax increase.
Right, because my thought process is like, again, obviously, costs are going up, right? And so if the police is a large item, I think it's easier for us to go to the taxpayers to say, this millage increase is going to a very specific thing and it's in your hands.
And every time we've done that, we've had 100%. I mean,
Before we
strong.
ask for more tax dollars,
Yeah.
I think there's more
Yeah,
opportunities
it's-
to look, frankly.
there's plenty to do between
So,
then and now.
from a finance committee point of view, the budget is solid, this is where we need to be, so I'm satisfied with it. We've talked about it enough for the last 3 months.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second.
I got one other thing. I'd like to see us add $7,000 to the police budget to get a second electronic speed sensor sign.
I thought about that, Bill, and that we have enough of our own discretionary funds, we can buy that without adding it.
Will
Slowing
we
down the
do it
cost.
if we don't put it in the budget's my question.
You guys can.
We can make that recommendation as a council to do it this week or next week.
And-
$5.5 grand is not gonna,
As long as we do it, I'm
You can do it
okay.
at any time, you can pay for it out of your discretion.
but rather than
Whatever.
amend this budget already, I think we're all gonna support
Okay,
this.
as
We're
long
on
as we're all
record,
agreed.
we could say that we support that.
Okay.
and we'll just-
Okay, then that's fine.
Just go buy one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Vote.
Any other comments?
Again, back to the concern if there is, the $50,000 now that we're talking about, not the $20,000, that would be something, if there was a big, storm and we had a whole lot that we wanted to maybe help the public instead of just help the private properties, not our public properties, that would be a big, something we'd have to discuss. in
That's a
depth,
discussion
right? That would
topic
be
we
a big
need to-
discussion in depth, right, that we'd have to figure it out.
What happens in those circumstances is that you have to make decisions on the run.
Right.
As the storm's getting cleaned up.
Right.
And my suggestion is that this fall, before all that crappy weather comes on, that we talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what your expectations are around that.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
before it happens, not when you're in the middle of it.
It's tough to predict how.
No, I guess the point is, if you're gonna help the private sector clean up their land, how do we decide that,
Well,
right?
so I would
We had
suggest,
discussed that earlier, and
Yeah.
then we had discussed, that's
so,
one of the
so
discussions.
it's worthy conversation to have.
Yeah.
I would suggest we don't bog this down with that
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
Because there's so many questions to ask, like, well, shoot, we've,
Right,
all
I
these
agree.
parcels, did we just create a $200,000 request or a $50,000 request?
Right.
I would suggest we take it offline about how best to handle it and how to.
But can we talk about it later?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
question.
Perfectly happy.
Then we have that
That's what- we
discussion
have to
later.
have that
Perfectly happy.
discussion.
Okay.
I'll be back
Okay.
asking for guidance.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, in discussion, all in favor of
Aye.
approving the budget?
Aye.
Okay, next thing, we have consent agenda, 3 different things. One is the Music on the Green, June 28th and July 26th. The other is Art in the Village on Labor Day weekend. And the third is a cooperative agreement with Oakland County stating that we will stay in the community development block
Motion
grant
to
program.
approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
The consent.
I second.
And any further discussion? No? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, new business. We have a sewage disposal system. We need to adopt a rate that has been proposed. Do you want to take this?
Well, and there's a lot of information here, but the essence of this is that where, well, let me back up a second. Our citizens pay for sewage services, and a portion of that money goes into a maintenance fund with which the WRC does repairs on properties that need help in Franklin. If they have a pump go out or something like that, and they send people out to fix that, that's paid for out of the money that goes into that fund. The amounts that are being calculated as increases for Franklin in this are somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% to 2%. They're reasonable, in my opinion, and clearly, we are one of the smallest pieces in this overall puzzle, but this is not, I have to recommend that you go ahead and do this, because just Franklin Sewer System, the increases in the sewage disposal, it's down 1.6%. In operating expense, it's down 4.7%. In reserves, it's up 2.6%. In non-operating debt, it's up 1.2%. And in non-rate revenue, it's down 31.4%. Non-rate revenue is stuff that they get for paid for services and bills that they send for various services as opposed to an extended rate. But the total increase for Franklin is less than 1%.
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next item is the millage rates that will be on our tax bills this fall. There's a sheet here that explains 2, 4, 7 different millage rates, starting with our general operating millage, to a couple for fire, library, rubbish, roads, and police. Do we have a motion to approve this
Motion to
2023
approve.
tax rate request?
Motion to approve.
I second.
Any discussion?
Yes, because the last time when we missed this timing, it cost us money.
Yes, let's make sure we go, I lost.
Yes.
Oh, it's already in there.
Good job.
This represents a 8.9 mil increase. Last year it was 5.4, but that's the Hadley override. So tax bills, folks, are going up this year, but that's what you voted to.
And that will appear in what tax bill?
September.
It's the one coming up July 1st.
Okay, which is due September 15th, yeah, yep,
Yeah,
yep,
it's effective July 1.
yes.
Yeah.
Questions about the millage? And what, David, you?
We're still the cheapest game in town.
Yeah, so.
The cheapest game.
Can you
Yeah,
find the sheet?
so, let's
I lost that
just,
sheet. I mean,
you gotta approve
It's
it, we should
under-
approve it. I mean, there's no conversation about this.
No, there's nothing to discuss.
Yeah, I had no time to it, I was good with it.
Just prefer-
Yeah, I think timing was the issue last year, and Sounds like Susan's got us covered there, so, okay.
All right.
Any further discussion? David, you okay?
Yeah.
All in favor of
Aye.
approving?
Aye.
Section? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next is budget amendments. We have a document here that's all bad news.
The resolution in the last whereas explains the specific numbers and how they're changing in terms of total volume. We're still winding up with a projected ending fund balance of 725,000.
But that is nowhere near the 75% that it should be.
75%?
75% of our budget ought to be in reserve. That's the recommendation of the auditors. We're way down. We're at,
Not 7.
yes, it's been that way all along, guys. The last couple of years, we've significantly reduced our fund balance.
They definitely will reduce our balance, but that's the formula, 75.
That's Plant Moran has told us that, yeah. So,
Yeah, we'll
I'm,
talk some more about
yeah.
that, Bill. I think your number's out of whack.
we gotta,
So too.
we gotta pay more attention to fund balances. Yeah,
Well, then let's have a conversation with the numbers, but I think it's less than 70%, my recollection.
So we have a resolution, do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion
for
to
the
approve.
Budget amendments?
I will second.
Any discussion? You got it there, David? Yeah, with the general fund, on page, the page is a number, it's page 2, the general fund is 32%. It ought to be way more than that, but that's something we just need to work on next year or two, so. Okay, any discussion at all on this one?
Getting more revenue. Either that or cutting expenses.
Two ways to do it, more revenue, less expenses.
Well, Dan Gilbert's got to build something else.
Are we okay to, ready to vote?
Yes?
All in favor of
Aye.
budget amendments?
Aye.
Okay, next one, we have a resolution for the Michigan Pension Grant Program. There's a resolution on the second page of PSLZ's note, which basically says we want to be considered for a grant that will get our pension fund up to 60%
Make a
funding, which is
motion
a,
to approve the resolution for a
Second?
Michigan pension
I
grant.
will second.
and we are,
Grant and not a loan.
it's a
Good
grant,
thing.
correct.
Very good thing.
Did I say that? Yeah. This represents a couple $100,000, I think, correct? Yeah, so,
And I
Any
can't, I have to
discussion?
imagine every community in Michigan has to be asking.
absolutely, yeah.
Yes, no one's gonna turn it down. There's a cap, they hit the cap and maybe back it off.
Gotcha.
We'll
But we
see
should
if there's
approve.
enough money in the state
Yeah.
fund to do this.
Yeah,
But
if every community taps it out, then we'll get less, but we
let's
should.
put our oar in the water, so.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion on this one?
Other than filling out the paperwork, right, is there any way that we're at risk with this? I don't know,
No.
okay.
No, the
No.
legislature was very clear.
Good thing.
Okay.
Aye.
All in favor? Michael's one ahead of us here. Last thing on the agenda, authorization of golf carts on public roads.
Motion to approve.
A second.
And discussion?
This is a motion to direct the planning commission
Yeah.
to look at it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's correct.
I think
Yeah,
that's
so,
reasonable.
and again, it was circulated, but I prepared a memo for everybody, so, again, the state law is pretty prescriptive around the certain requirements, so I set those requirements out with links to kind of direct the planning commission's discussion.
Yeah,
Nicely done.
I mean, this is a good baseline. There, I looked at a couple of these other sections in the, that we could probably consider applying.
Right,
And it was confusing the way you wrote this. I went back and looked. On
Yeah.
number 7, it's basically saying you can't drive all night. Starting from
yes.
30 minutes,
yep.
yeah, not just a 30-minute window between.
No, what is, yeah,
Starting
it's exactly
30
what you're
minutes
saying.
before to 30 minutes
It's a
after.
safety issue,
Yeah.
get golf carts off the
Should say
road.
2 instead of or.
Correct.
Yeah, there's,
Right.
Yeah, during the time period
Yep.
from 30 minutes to.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
yep, yep.
But yeah, well, planning will clean all that.
Yeah.
up. We're just sending it to them, and
So,
yeah, it's-
we had this in my cottage, my second house, Michael, no, my third. And everybody, it's great.
Everybody
So,
uses it.
Yeah, I know, it's
They're
great.
This is one I can't buy into. I just think this is opening us up to a big safety issue, and we got enough
Oh, my
complication
goodness.
with people walking in our streets.
Bill, I have firsthand experience.
Can I finish, please?
Yes, please.
And I just don't see the wisdom in doing this. We're not a small town like Ithaca. We are a major part of Detroit, even though we are 3,000 population.
I think
So the
that-
law may allow it, but I think it's just.
I
not
feel like
really
for the
same.
past couple of years, we've heard that we are rural. In that,
Well, we're trying to maintain-
walking strollers down the street is perfectly safe.
Well, it's
Our pioneers at
maybe as
golf
safe
carts.
as a golf
This
cart.
is
But this
historic.
is to study it, right? So we're gonna study it.
Our guys have a
It's
lot
not
to
a
do.
decision until
I
we get
just-
a recommendation.
Don't attack me for taking a position.
No,
I'm not
Perfectly
taking a
fine,
position.
Perfectly fine. I will share my opinion.
I'm sure you
also.
were there when we
Um,
went from horse and buggies to cars.
I was.
You had the same
And
concern.
I
We-
supported that one.
My community out of Clark Lake, there are villagers all over the place with golf carts. It's a wonderful thing. No issues with it. It's been going for years. And so it's such a non-issue.
Okay, all in favor of sending this to the planning commission?
Aye.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
approved.
Don't forget to tip your wait staff.
There was something that was in the packet that I read.
Bill, I'll look.